Poštovani dame i gospodo, možemo da počnemo. Dear ladies and gentlemen, we can start. I'm so happy to see you here in this room at our 7th annual conference named Decarbonization in Energy Sector. You know, I am the Branislava Lepotić-Kovačević, president of UPES, and we are organizer of this conference together with European Federation of Energy Law Associations, EFELA, with the Chamber of Commerce of Serbia. Thank you for that. And also with our supporters, Elektroprivreda Srbije, BDK Advokati, Belgrade Fund for Policy Exclusivity, Heinrich Boll Stiftung, Moravčević, Vojnović i partneri, CMS, D2P and Wolf Ties. And now, to not lose time, because it is so interesting topic, I would like to invite Ms. Maja Vukadinović, who is acting assistant minister of mining, acting assistant minister of mining and energy of Republic of Serbia, to take the floor. Maja, the floor is yours, please.
Dobar dan svima, dragi organizatori, učesnici ove konferencije, dame i gospodo, pre svega zadovoljstvo mi je da vas pozdravim u ime Ministarstva rudarstva i energetike, u svoje lično ime na 7. godišnjoj konferenciji Udruženja za pravo energetike, koja će se baviti temom dekarbonizacije, koja tema je inače izazov i prioritet u energetskom sektoru Srbije, a Vlada Republike Srbije kroz strateška dokumenta i planove pokazala jasnu tendenciju koja ima za cilj smanjenje potrošnje energije, zatim smanjenje emisija štetnih gasova sa efektom staklene bašte, a sve u cilju stvaranja stabilnog i nezavisnog energetskog sektora. Kada je u pitanju Republika Srbija, moram da naglasim da je Evropska zajednica prošle godine označila Srbiju kao lidera u regionu kada je u pitanju sprovođenje reformi u oblasti energetike. Prošle godine smo sproveli aukcije za dodelu tržišnih premija, najveće, dakle odjednom sprovedene, za solar i vetar, a pre nekoliko dana smo raspisali drugi krug aukcija za dodelu 424,8 megavata tržišnih premija. Od javnih investicija koje se tiču obnovljivih izvora energije, a samim tim i dekarbonizacije, pomenula bih izgradnju vetroparka Kostolac kapaciteta 66 megavata, zatim solarne elektrane Petka kapaciteta 9,75 megavata, a potpisali smo i ugovor o izgradnji velike solarne elektrane kapaciteta 1 gigavata sa 200 megavata baterijskog skladišta. Usvajanjem nacionalnog integrisanog i klimatskog plana Republike Srbije do 2030. godine sa projekcijama do 2050. godine, kao i strategije razvoja energetike, postavili smo jedan veoma značajan cilj, a to je da energetski sektor postane u potpunosti ugljenično neutralan. Takođe, među ciljima koji su postavljeni ovim strateškim dokumentima izdvojila bih i značajno povećanje energetske efikasnosti obnovljivih izvora energije, a sve u cilju stvaranja stabilnog i nezavisnog energetskog sektora. To će naravno otvoriti nova radna mesta u zelenoj ekonomiji, a istovremeno će značajno doprineti smanjenju energetskog siromaštva. U skladu sa imperativom dekarbonizacije, ono što je veoma važno pitanje jeste način proizvodnje električne energije, pre svega kroz povećanje kapaciteta obnovljivih izvora energije, izgradnjom solarnih vetroelektrana i hidroelektrana. Do 2040. godine postavljen je cilj da ukupan kapacitet solarnih i vetroelektrana iznosi 3,5 gigavata, što znači da će svaki drugi proizvedeni megavat sat biti iz zelene energije, a istovremeno Istovremeno, cilj jeste da se iz obnovljivih izvora energije proizvodi električna energija do 2040. godine u procentu od 73. Što se tiče uglja kao našeg domaćeg resursa, on će i dalje nastaviti da se koristi u termoelektranama, pre svega zbog bezbednosti i sigurnosti, ali nam je cilj da se u potpunosti do 2040. godine izbaci kao energent za grejanje u urbanim područjima. U uslovima proizvodnje, to je povećanje proizvodnje obnovljivih izvora energije, povećanje za balansiranje obezbedit ćemo kroz izgradnju novih reverzibilnih hidroelektrana kao što su Bistrica i Đerdap 3. Međutim, za potpuni izlazak iz fosilnih goriva potrebno je obezbediti i kapacitete bazne energije, gde je kao najoptimalnije rješenje prepoznata nuklearna energija i zato bih pomenula da je nedavno usvojenim izmenama i dopunama Zakona o energetici ukinuta zabrana izgradnje nuklearnih elektrana koja u našoj državi postojala počev od 1989. godine. Međutim, svi dalji koraci će se naravno sprovoditi u skladu sa smernicama Međunarodne agencije za atomsku energiju. Radit ćemo i na poboljšanju regulatornog okvira i jačanju internih kapaciteta. I da zaključim, dakle, neophodno je da bismo postigli sve ove ciljeve koji su ambiciozni, ali su i veoma realni, neophodna je saradnja kontinuirana svih učesnika, kako donosioca odluka, tako i energetske kompanije, kao i stručne i naučne javnosti. Još jednom da se zahvalim organizatorima konferencije, što sam imala priliku da se obratim na početku i želim uspešan rad i konstruktivan dijalog. Hvala vam na vašoj pažnji.
Ja se zahvaljujem gospođi Vukadinović na ovim lepim rečima i na tome što nas je uputila i u tome šta se radi u ministarstvu, koji su pravci razvoja i na tome što je došla da pozdravi ovaj naš skup u ime ove institucije. Ja bih sada da pozovem gospodina Vicentea, koji je predsjednik Evropske federacije udruženja za pravo energetike. Vicente, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you very well. Thank you so much. Good morning. How are you?
Fine. With us is Vicente Lopez y Burmayer, who is the president of European Federation of Energy Law Association. Vicente, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you so much. Good morning, distinguished authorities, excellent Madame Markovic, President of the Serbian Energy Law Association, my dear friend Dr. Branislava Lepetic, and esteemed colleagues, dear friends. It is a great pleasure and honor for me to participate again in this Congress. And I would first of all thank so much for your very kind invitation. Congress that I would like to say that is consistently so pertinent and meticulously organized by the leading actors of Serbian energy sector and the community of legal experts in energy law and regulation of your country. I very much also appreciate the effort that always is doing by the Chamber of Commerce of Serbia and all the sponsors that participate, and they are very much committed with this Congress. Of course, I would particularly like to extend my heartfelt congratulations to the President Lepetic, Dr. Branislava, for not only her contributions in your country, but for her contributions that I would consider extraordinary, and her commitment in her participation in the organizing committee, in the executive committee of EFELA. In all the meetings that we organize, in the seminars and in the annual Congress, her participation is so relevant. This year, we have decided in our last Congress, the fourth Congress that was held on Milano, to organize working groups, specialized working groups with different verticals and subjects that we consider particularly important. And I am pleased to announce that Dr. Branislava will chair one of these working groups, a decision that I wish to underscore in today's institutional context. The theme of your Congress, decarbonization and energy and investments, at the end of the day, and competitiveness on the backwards aligns seamlessly with both European and international agendas. The European Union is at a pivotal juncture following the recent elections to the European Parliament and the reappointment of Madame Ursula von der Leyen as President of the European Commission. At the conclusion of the previous term of Madame von der Leyen, the President commissioned a report from the former governor of the European Central Bank, former Prime Minister of Italy, Dr. Mario Draghi, that he decided to entitle "The Future of European Competitiveness" to assess what the situation of the European Union is on that regard and provide recommendations for enhancements, particularly in light of the trade disparities with major competitors at the international arena, such as the United States and the Republic of China. The findings of this report unequivocally underscore the critical role of energy in the European economy and the imperative to steer our efforts towards enhanced competitiveness, productivity, innovation, and the attainment of decarbonization objectives. Translating these political aspirations into legal frameworks needs the completion of existing legislative packages, such as Fit for 55, Clean Energy Package, coming from 2018 and 2019, as you all know, the implementation of the approved reforms of market structure in electricity and in natural gas, green hydrogen, and gas renewables, the execution of still current, and not by emergency measures, now they are normal ones, of the repower legislative packages, and the prompt and effective establishment of regulatory foundations for a clean industrial policy. And this is apparently a slight but very important qualified change, that we continue with the Green Deal, but we are going to move or shift in favor of the clean industrial policy. That is the agenda to be followed by the European institutions. And of course, ensuring supply and security of supply, as always, remains a paramount concern of the European Union, particularly after the events of 2022, that I think is not necessary to recall at this stage. In recent energy law congresses in other countries, I have articulated that energy encompasses, in my view, 6 key dimensions, particularly in Europe, but I think it could be extended internationally. Geopolitical dimension, economic, technological, climate, social, and regulatory. Each dimension integrates distinct legislative and jurisprudential implications. Geopolitical dimension. This pertains to security and solidarity. Security of supply, security and safety, use of WIS, and solidarity. That means international cooperation and also cooperation across generations. Economic dimension. This involves market reforms already mentioned more in detail today, power purchase agreements and its developments and modalities of execution, contracts for difference, state aid, efficiency measures, investments, trade, tax action. Technological dimension, extremely important. Digital transformation, new technologies. The energy sector is leading a bunch of innovation in the field of energy technologies in all senses, in all the supply chain, particularly oriented to decarbonization efforts, and the digitalization is being shown as a new vector of the energy sector. We have at least 3 vectors now. We have the electricity, that is a vector that transforms the primary energy sources. We have digitalization, and we have green hydrogen as a vector. Climate dimension. This focuses on the goals that we all know, international and regional in Europe, in terms of reduction, mitigation, and finance, particularly underlined during the Baku International Congress, or in other words, the COP29. And of course, in this climate dimension, we have also to make the we have to introduce or to join the elements of circular economy mandates and all taxonomy and compliance in all the elements of the new directives, corporate social responsibility, and some other group of legislative packages that I consider particularly important in terms of compliance. Social dimension. These emphasize the questions related, of course, to universal access of energy, affordability, because there is not access without affordability, and the fight or the eradication, if possible, of energy poverty, at least to diminish the level of energy poverty that we have in our societies. Regulatory dimension, it's all the things connected with the legislative packages and the enforcement and execution. Of course, a lot of things to do in the years to come in the European Union on that regard. But I would like to underline three elements that I believe are important, because for the first time has been taken into account in some very relevant European publications and reports, particularly in this case in the LETA report, with regard to the more integration of the European internal market. And in that report, Enrico Letta, also former Prime Minister of Italy, he says very clearly that we have to make an effort of simplifying our legislation, to take it out all the things that are obsolete or are redundant, or they are not implemented with enough clarity and legal certainty and all these things. And he also put forward another thing that, by the way, I was saying many years ago, and also comment in two occasions with former President Durão Barroso, that is the codification of our legislative packages. Because if not, it would be very important to simplify, to provide more clarity, to assure more certainty of the rules and all the things connected with all that. It is self-evident to such a quality audience that you have in the Chamber of Commerce today that the energy industry holds paramount importance in our society. Equally apparent is the fact that this industry is undergoing profound transformations, not mentioned from the geopolitical side, and taking into account that we are living at the core of Europe, in the European theater of operations, and the military people normally uses this type of expression, two very important, relevant, and sad conflicts, all while steadfastly maintaining its essential function, the production and supply of a commodity and services indispensable for economic development and growth across of all communities and societies. This commodity must be produced and distributed within a framework that fully embraces environmental and climate imperatives, facilitating the energy transition by promoting a cleaner and more renewable energy mix, and by committing both politically and legally to the decarbonization of the economy towards climate neutrality. In this endeavor, law and regulation serve as indispensable instruments. The political mandate to transition to clean, renewable energy and to achieve decarbonization needs the fast, comprehensive adaptation of both European and national regulatory frameworks. From the perspective of the European Union, the establishment of the European Federation of Energy Law Associations, EFELA, embodies these efforts, fostering a deeper comprehensive of the extensive European and international legislation, jurisprudence, and doctrine, encouraging cooperation among energy law experts to exchange experiences, best practices, and regulatory guidelines, convening congresses as this one, as today, Johnny, and seminars to scrutinize the state of the art in energy law, and cultivating cooperative relationship with national and European institutions to suggest, propose, or recommend measures that could enhance the quality of energy law and regulation. It is widely acknowledged that the energy industry pursues three overarching objectives: ensuring a security of supply with universal and affordable access, achieving sustainability, and attaining economical efficiency. These objectives are pursued within a context of considerable energy technical complexity, encompassing industrial processes and chains, sophisticated markets, there are no more sophisticated markets than electricity one, and regulated infrastructures. Moreover, in recent years, the geopolitical dynamics of energy and its technological transformations have amplified its economical impact, needing strategic analysis and foresights. All of these, in my opinion, are the framing which the legal experts we have to proceed and we have to advance and we have to make all of our efforts. So I very much wish to all of you that we have a very fruitful discussions and exchanges and analysis, and you enjoy all this very much in today's journey. And I congratulate you deeply for this 7th Serbian Energy Law Congress. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vicente. Thank you for your participation. Thank you for your always inspirative speech. And I would like just to announce something with what we spoke a few days ago, also in front of you, that as a fellow firstly connected and after that integrated Serbian Energy Law Association in its society, now we decided that it is a time that next year we will organize together a regional conference here in the, if I can say, Western Balkan on Energy Community region, together with EFILA, and to discuss these so important topics, because we are talking about market coupling. That means we need also as lawyers, which is, I have to say, it is not only a lawyer topic, because energy is multidisciplinary topic that we will talk together next year. And I'm also invited you here who are sitting here to discuss about the topics for this conference and to find the best way how to organize this and to find the most important and interesting topics which will help us to understand and somehow incorporate and implement these very important things. Thank you, Vicente, for everything. And now I am invited Mr. Radovan Stanić, who is, sad možemo da kažemo, pomoćnik direktora EPS-a, koja je jako značajna kompanija, posebno za nas, koja nam je mnogo pomogla da organizujemo ovu konferenciju, a za koju je ova tema izuzetno značajna i koja je u fokusu i EPS u fokusu teme i tema u fokusu EPS-a. Izvolite.
Dobar dan, hvala na lepim rečima. Poštovane dame i gospodo, zadovoljstvo mi je da vas pozdravim u ime generalnog direktora Elektroprivrede Srbije, gospodina Dušana Živkovića. EPS sa pažnjom prati sve što radi Udruženje za pravo u energetici, a posebno i podržava, a posebno konferencije ove vrste, kao što smo i rekli, koje su od izuzetnog značaja za Elektroprivredu Srbije. Zelena tranzicija je prisutna u EPS-u i EPS uveliko radi na planovima, programima i prilagođavanju svoje proizvodnje u budućnosti. Naravno, zelena tranzicija i dekarbonizacija ne smeju ni na koji način ugroziti energetsku stabilnost i sigurnost snabdevanja krajnjih kupaca električnom energijom. To podrazumeva smanjenje proizvodnje iz uglja, povećanje udela obnovljive energije, a to svakako zahteva i značajna finansijska sredstva, dobru strategiju i dobre planove u saradnji sa državom će EPS provoditi. EPS već sada radi na zelenoj tranziciji. Najveći broj projekata se odnosi na energiju iz obnovljivih izvora. Da ne ponavljamo, i vetroenergija iz Kostolca i solarna energija iz Petke, ugovor sa strateškim partnerom za izgradnju solara od 1000 megavata, izgradnja reverzibilne elektrane u Bistrici, saradnja sa regionalnim partnerima za izgradnju novih elektrana na Drini, i to su sve projekti koji značajno će smanjiti udeo proizvodnje električne energije iz uglja, povećati udeo proizvodnje iz obnovljivih izvora. Naravno, i stare, odnosno postojeće proizvodne kapacitete treba zadržati. EPS značajno ulaže u revitalizaciju postojećih kapaciteta, tako da očekujemo da sadašnji hidropotencijali mogu da rade nesmetano u narednih 30 do 35 godina. Sve ovo je put ka cilju koji je postavljen, da smo apsolutno prihvatili potrebu izmene sadašnjeg proizvodnog portfolija i cilj je da do 2030. godine 45% energije bude proizvedeno iz obnovljivih izvora. Zahvaljujemo se na pozivu na konferenciju. Smatramo da su ove konferencije izuzetno značajne, da će se kroz razmenu ideja i predloga postići cilj kome svi težimo, a naš je cilj da EPS bude stabilan oslonac i za građane i za privredu i da u budućnosti nemamo nikakvih problema u snabdevanju električnom energijom, da postignemo i energetsku stabilnost i energetsku nezavisnost. Hvala puno.
Ja se zahvaljujem gospodinu Staniću na ovako konciznom, ali vrlo sadržajnom izlaganju koje nam je ukazalo u kom procesu će se EPS razvijati i koji nam uliva sigurnost da ćemo mi stvarno i u budućnosti imati sigurnost snabdevanja od EPS-a, od kog smo i do sada to očekivali. I samo još nekoliko reči u ime UPES-a. Dear colleagues, dear friends, this is our 7th annual conference of the Serbian Energy Law Association. This year, we are here to address challenges and uncertainties that one does not expect in the space of the energy law. Today's conference aims to help us to understand what is going on in the legal framework and in the energy sector in our country and in Europe. It may happen that we are going to leave this room with more questions than answers. That is why our colleagues from the Serbian Energy Utility, UPES, are with us today. Their company is exposed to risks. They are looking for answers that our profession has to deliver by providing stable and predictable legal framework for energy transition and decarbonization of energy portfolio. It is about investments. It is about interest rates. It is about availability of the cost of capital. It is about trade with energy. It is about clean air, and it is about the security of energy supply. Now, more than ever, we need to discuss critical problems with our colleagues in Europe, within the European Federation of Energy Law Association, EFILA, and even more general, our colleagues in various institutions who are present here. We are facing political challenges to very principles of energy law. There is a war going on not so far from here down the Danube River. European energy market is exposed to effect of climate change. For a few weeks, German wind energy production is lowest since 2016. 26% below production during same period in 2023, according to Reuters. And it is cold outside. Ukraine is now importer of electricity and gas. We have here opportunity to talk with colleagues from Brussels, London, Greece, and Ukraine, as well to the president of EFILA today. There are many people in the room. I would like to encourage you to ask questions, get into discussions, be provocative, and to be suspicious. We need to understand the situation, and we need to come up with the solution. Thank you. Now I'm invited Angelka Todorovic, our secretary, who is partner in UPES law firm. This session will be in her hand. She will chair and moderate this session with the title Decarbonization Investment in Energy Sector and Security of Supply. Angelka, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Test, da li me čujete? Da. Dobar dan, dame i gospodo. Hvala vam što prisustvujete 7. godišnjoj konferenciji Udruženja za pravo energetike. Moje je zadovoljstvo da vas pozdravim prvo u svoje ime. Ja sam Angelka Todorović, advokat sam u regionalnoj kancelariji Wolf Thijs, koja ove godine slavi 65 godina poslovanja. Ali pre svega vas pozdravljam ispred UPES-a kao članica UPES-a i od ove godine sekretarka našeg divnog udruženja. Naš panel će biti izuzetno dinamičan, imat ćemo jako raznolike perspektive i bez previše odlaganja želela bih da nas uvedem u prvu temu danas, a u duhu toga što je UPES pre svega udruženje čije je svrha da podstiče kako edukaciju, tako i razvoj što stručnog, što opšteg dijaloga u oblasti energetike. Moje je veliko zadovoljstvo da današnji panel otvorim predavanjem na temu zelene agende i molim gospodina Aleksandra Kovačevića da se pridruži na bini, kao i profesorku Dragoslavu Stojiljković sa Mašinskog fakulteta.
Ok, Anđelka, hvala. Ovo je samo kratko podsjećanje da vidimo šta se nalazi okolo ove teme o kojoj danas pričamo. Dakle, vrlo brzo i vrlo kratko jedan mali istorijski pregled. Znači, 2005. potpisan ugovor o energetskoj zajednici u okviru Stability pakta za jugoistočnu Evropu. Neobrnuto. Dakle, u tom momentu Evropska komisija i nekolicina zemalja u ovom regionu, od kojih su neke sada članice Evropske unije, su potpisale ovaj ugovor. Malo iza toga je nastao Regionalni savez za saradnju, Regional Cooperation Council, RCC, koji je preuzeo radove, arhive i proces Stability pakta za jugoistočnu Evropu. Dakle, ovo je ustanova u čijem okviru se odigrava ovo što mi danas zovemo zelena agenda, a čiji je opet jedan deo ugovora o energetskoj zajednici. Ovim se bavi Regionalni savez za saradnju. Vi svi koristite njihov rad. Kad putujete preko granice, koristite besplatni roaming, u zemljama Zapadnog Balkana koristite mogućnost brzog i efikasnog prelaska granica sa ličnom kartom i tome slično. Znači, ova ustanova je uradila neke okolnosti. Ovo je iz njihovog redovnog barometra. Nekoliko samo crtica gde se vidi koliko je stanovništvo zabrinuto s jedne strane cenama i s druge strane cenama energije i s druge strane zagađenje vazduha. Znači, ovo je jedna slika, evo još jedne, to isto važi za poslovno okruženje, znači za mala, srednja i velika preduzeća. Takođe, pitanje cene energije. I naravno, isto tako kod stanovništva, ponovo pitanje cene energije. Prekjuče je bio razgovor u Evropskom parlamentu gde su učestvovali članovi parlamenta iz regiona. Opet je pitanje cene energije dominiralo tom diskusijom, bez obzira što mi svi ovde znamo da je cena samo ishod čitavog niza drugih okolnosti. Ovde imamo ove regionalne strategije koje su donete, usvojene u mehanizmu regionalnog saveta i one su dale neki rezultat. Dakle, imamo jedno iskustvo počeo Stability pakta do danas koje je preko 25 godina. I naravno, ovo su ključne deklaracije koje se tiču formiranja zelene agende. Znači, ideja koja je nastala sa Sofijskom deklaracijom u novembru 2020. godine, zatim sa deklaracijom o energetskoj sigurnosti. Znači, pogledajte, prošlo je samo nepune 2 godine da se pitanje energetske sigurnosti postavi na tako moćan način da zauzme jednu celu deklaraciju predsjednika država i vlada. I iza toga, nedavno, pre nekih 2 meseca, deklaracija u Hamburgu o zelenoj agendi, ministarska deklaracija na nivou ministara zaštite životne sredine. Pogledajte ove linkove, prezentacija će biti objavljena, pogledajte pažljivo ove dokumente i pogledajte u kakvom su odnosu ovi dokumenti sa praksom i delovanjem energetske zajednice. Znači, ovo zahteva krajnju pažnju da bi se video kako izgleda ova pravna okolnost.
Zelena agenda i sve ove deklaracije koje su prethodno prikazane praćeno je akcionim planom za implementaciju zelene agende, koja u stvari predstavlja, da kažemo, u stvari akcioni plan je rezultat u stvari Sofijske deklaracije. Donet je akcioni plan za period 2021-2030, znači za period od 10 godina, pri čemu sa jednom važnom da postoji mogućnost promena, znači i aktivnosti i akcionog plana, ali nikako popuštanje krajnjeg cilja. Znači, samo jednostavno kroz praćenje, realizacije, implementacije može da dođe do korekcije, ali krajnji cilj je vrlo jasno definisan. Akcioni plan prati još jedan važan dokument, a to su zaključci iz Tirane iz 2023. godine. Opet tu su linkovi koji pokazuju u stvari i možete pratiti šta je sve definisano ovim dokumentima. Kako izgleda akcioni plan za zelenu agendu Zapadnog Balkana? Znači, akcioni plan odnosi se na 6 ekonomija. Za svaku od ekonomija prati se proces realizacije i predviđena je i izrada izveštaja o realizaciji akcionog plana i prvi takav izveštaj za 2022. je i uređen, on je javno dostupan i može da se naravno postavi i uvid u sve to kako izgleda praćenje akcionog plana. 7 oblasti je zastupljeno u akcionom planu. Za praćenje, da bi jednostavno bilo sistemsko i sistematsko praćenje, postoji 58 akcija koje su jasno definisane i u okviru tih 58 akcija postoji još 6 dodatnih akcija, tako da ukupno imamo 64 akcije koje prate sprovođenje akcionog plana zelene agende. Naravno, sve te akcije koje su definisane nisu numeričke, tako da od tih 64, 34 indikatora postoje koje su numeričke i koje mogu da se prate za svaku od ekonomija. Sve to praćeno je dodatno sa 53 dokumenta koja su na regionalnom ili nacionalnom, odnosno na nivou ekonomija i one dodatno još su deo celokupnih aktivnosti u okviru realizacije zelene agende za Zapadni Balkan. Sad, kada kažemo da postoji 7 celina u okviru akcionog plana, dobro je da se i pogledaju koje su te celine. Mi govorimo ovde pre svega o nekako energetici, o dekarbonizaciji, međutim, u stvari zelena agenda znači nešto mnogo značajnije, nešto sveobuhvatnije, znači tu su pre svega klimatske promene kao prva tematska oblast, zatim energetika, održiv transport, cirkularna ekonomija, smanjenje zagađenja, održiva poljoprivreda i zaštita prirode i biodiverziteta. Kada se uđe u suštinu kompletno zelene agende i praćenje akcionog plana, može se vidjeti da ovih 7 tematskih oblasti u stvari imaju međuzavisnosti i da neke od akcija koje su u stvari vezane za određene tematske oblasti su itekako povezane sa nekim drugim i da te 58, odnosno 64 akcije ne mogu se tako jednoznačno pratiti, tako da u stvari na ekonomijama i na realizaciji zelene agende i akcionog plana postoji dosta posla i sve to treba da doprinese u stvari toj dekarbonizaciji i ostvarivanju ciljeva zelene agende. Hvala.
Thank you very much for this introductory lecture. I will be switching to English now, which is made possible by our lovely translating team. They're waving to us from above. And as a matter of housekeeping for everyone involved, I really encourage you to pace yourselves so as to allow them to translate properly and to give us all the full experience of this conference. With that, I would have the great pleasure to invite a good friend of our association and invite to the stand Mr. Christian Eggenhofer from the School of Transnational Governance of the European University Institute, Florence, Italy. Mr. Eggenhofer is here quite literally in between flights. He might be late for his next flight, so we don't have a lot of time with him. Without further ado, I give you the floor, Christian.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for your kind words. And indeed, I will need to leave very quickly, but for the good reasons, I will have to be at the 90th birthday of my father-in-law, and that's a very important thing which you cannot miss, despite, all the good things that happen here in Belgrade. Branislava mentioned in the beginning, we're looking for answers. We are working on just a little bit of an answer to the coal phase out and to the new investment, which of course go together, and the minister has mentioned the importance of that. Last year, around the same time, we were starting to develop this concept to include the Western Balkan in the European emissions trading system, in the EU ETS. We haven't yet formalized it at that time, but later on we put it on paper and discussed the issue in Brussels with stakeholders and of course the political people. Now the good news is it works. It could work. We didn't hear anybody saying nonsense, impossible. The concept is reasonably robust. Now, the bad news is we haven't got much further than that today. The reason is there is a lack of political courage or will on both sides of the side. Neither in the European Union, people have said, look, this is a great idea. I mean, obviously this doesn't work like this, but this is a great idea. Let's go for it. And also from the Western Balkan countries, there was interest. Yeah, we look at this, the usual story. But if any of the sides said, hey, we want it, it could get traction and it would be a part of the solution. Now, in the meantime, we have developed the idea a bit further, actually make it different in a sense that the Western Balkan countries could move on their own. We have amended the idea so that the Western Balkan countries could set up everything in order to be able to join the ETS, to join the international carbon markets, or including the voluntary carbon market or whatever you wish. And keep in mind that in COP29, which was mentioned by the minister, there was a major agreement on international carbon markets, carbon credits, which allows for the sale of credits internationally. I mean, fine print needs to be done, but the deal is done. So the world, in a way, has changed. The EU is one possibility, but there are other possibilities to get these carbon credits too. Now, before I go a little bit into the details of this, let me also let me also go a little bit, take a step back. Whenever I travel or whenever I discuss with people in Southeast Europe, Central Europe, and also the Western Balkan, there's often still the assumption, decarbonization, or better, defossilization is a luxury. This is something for the rich people, driving electrical vehicles, etc., etc. Of course, that's totally wrong in my perception. I could not disagree more, because it's clear any new investment, I mean, new greenfield investment, will require low carbon energy. Can you imagine that Elon Musk builds a car based on fossil fuel-based electricity? Can you imagine that Apple builds a computer that is fueled on fossil fuel, coal or gas? Electricity, for me, this is unperceivable. The fancy food, will have to be, the fertilizers will be from low carbon ammonia and not from brown ammonia. You've seen it. China is leading in all these technologies. 25 years ago, they took a strategic decisions. These will be the new technologies, and that's where they are now. They're putting the heat on the famous German car industry, and by now, 1/3 of the global cars are built in China, and they're entering the European markets, and you will see much more of this. All the windmills in the Western Balkans are Chinese, or most of them, and you just go on and go on. And also the US Inflation Reduction Act is about climate change, sure, but it is first of all about economic competitiveness, future technologies, the future low carbon technologies. The US want to bring them back, keep them, because they're important for economic security, but also for the competitiveness of the future industry. And of course, sooner or later, carbon will have a price, explicit, through an emissions trading system, or somebody will have to pay something because of regulation. So that will be there. Now, this is represented in global picture. By now, we have 88% of the global greenhouse gas emissions are covered by net zero commitments. Now, I'm not saying they will all end up 2050 net zero, but something is happening, something will be done, and you see emissions going down. Interestingly enough, in the US, emissions have gone down very much. And they are now, when you invest in the US, you have a double advantage to Europe. One is cheaper energy prices, sure. The second is lower carbon because of the Inflation Reduction Act, because you get your low carbon technology into the new project. And so Europe is in a way falling behind. Chinese, I have mentioned, there's many countries, and only one of the G20 has not a net zero target, and that's Mexico, for whatever domestic reasons. Many regions, 151 countries, and they're getting more, 265 cities, you name it, and many, many companies, they realize unless you bend, you push towards low carbon, there is no future in the global market. You know this. Many of the solutions, the electrification solutions, are already profitable. It will take time until they come in market less. And the reason is very simple. Also, this is very well known, but always interesting to mention to the politicians. Electrification is not about low carbon. It is about efficiency. By just shifting to electrification, you reduce your energy demand dramatically. We would see if we shift 3 percentage points, towards electrification, we reduce by about 6 percentage points the total energy demand. So 3 times more efficient. That's what will be driving. And I've just showed here, you have different options. If you have a diesel bus that gets you 10 kilometers, You know, that gets you about 100. If you take a diesel bus, that's a standard technology, that gets you about 100. And if you take a charged electrical bus, it takes you 4 times as much. This is the bus. This is even more efficient. So that will be the future. Why would I invest in a CNG? Why would I invest in a fuel cell if the electrical bus gets me much further? Now, let's go to conclude this. So decarbonization is, first of all, about economic competitiveness, the way I've phrased it. And it's, of course, in the end, also security of supply. And by having a decentralized renewable system, of course, you're much more resilient. You have by being decentralized and you're depending on a number of different technologies which all interact. Of course, it is a completely different ball game. So decarbonization, economic competitiveness, and security of supply cannot really be separated. They are different sides. You know, I wouldn't almost say the coins, but the coin has only 2 sides. So it's different side of the same thing. Now, let me come back to the Western Balkan. I don't need to tell you, it was mentioned before many times, fast deteriorating security and stability of the power sector. Without, and that's the sort of the positive side, short-term and long-term energy supply, there will be no industrial investment. I mean, that's the point I made before. This investment require low-carbon energy, and so stability, security, low carbon, of course, affordable. And if there's an unstable energy sector, which we have in a couple of countries, also in Western Europe, it becomes gradually a security risk. Mentioned, the environmental situation was mentioned, the geopolitical, I don't need to mention here. And then, of course, the CBAM, the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, will make things much, much more complicated. And that should, in my belief, drive more towards this decarbonization. Bear with me, I come to the new proposals we are thinking around. Yes, I've said this before, we need not more incentive stimulus frameworks which then generate money. There needs to be real money, and that's the logic of this. Different options. There is lots of multilateral money, if you want to call it like this. It hasn't happened in the past. That doesn't mean it will not happen in the future, but it hasn't happened in the past. And if it hasn't happened, you need to ask why. There is the possibility of corrosive money from major global players that is coming. Now, the question is, how stable is this? How much resilient will this make the Western Balkan economies? How much less dependent? The energy community, which was mentioned several times, promotes this idea of a regional ETS or carbon pricing in general. It will lead to higher energy prices, which is, I think, energy price is the biggest concern of citizens. So, okay, why would you do this? So you need more compensation, less money in the budget. Will it lead to coal phase out? Probably not. Will it lead to new investment? I'm sure not. So I don't see the logic of it, but we can certainly discuss this. Inclusion of the EU ETS. The concept exists, could work, but requires political will, which so far hasn't come across on both sides. So let me go here in principle, in very schematic way, what could be done in order to move forward, to break the deadlock, if you wish, a practical step towards coal phase out and new investment. One could, in essence, mimic the EU ETS. So the Western Balkan governments say, look, each of the electricity utilities plus the potential new entrants, you will need new entrants, not just the old utilities. They get allowances or credits, if you want to call it, to cover their greenhouse gas emissions from now to, say, 2035. So a big bunch of credits. Money is there, could be used as collateral. So the emissions are covered. The companies then have the choice of continue burning coal, gas, using these emissions to cover using the credits to cover their emissions, or they invest in renewables, biomass, wind, solar, nuclear if somebody wants to do that. And then the allowances become free. The Western Balkans come to Brussels and say, hey guys, look, we're doing our job. We want to sell the credits into the EU ETS. ETS price is what it is. Now, if the EU says, no, you were not good enough, you can also try the voluntary carbon market, or what we call Article 6 under the Paris Agreement, the international carbon market, or you just even could be sold to donors, governments, multilateral development banks. Some governments will be able to pick up the whole bill. We are not talking about a huge bill. For the international community, the donors, we talk about something like 10 billions or whatever. So this is something to be absorbed. I'm looking here to the Norwegians, absorbed in a way it can be absorbed if you don't want to go to the carbon market. So the point is the choices are with the governments and the utilities, and they have a choice either to continue or phase down. Means, step by step, you don't need to do all the things. You keep some of the plants running, others you start investing over time, and the free allocation is then the allowances you can sell on the market. I hope this is sort of reasonably clear as a concept. We have thought it through, what would be required, et cetera, and we will put this certainly also on paper. So the Western Balkan countries could stay in control of designing their own program. It will mitigate the energy security risk, as I have outlined. It can easily be made compatible with the ETS, international donors, voluntary carbon market. One could start now and do the compatibility over time. One would need the MRV and monitoring, reporting, verification, accreditation, but that's already happening. In that sense, we are on the track there. It is in line with the staged and gradual accession. It's one of practical steps to do this, and I'm still sort of a bit disappointed why it's not being picked up. It's one of these practical ideas that could be done. It will address the CBAM risk, definitely, which will become more and more important, and there would be less uncertainty. I think the most important part is the Western Balkan countries have it in their own hand to move ahead on something that could actually work. Of course, things work in practice and not in theory, but this, I think, is a good starting point. Thank you for having invited me again. And, hopefully we see each other again, ideally not in November or December, but I guess there must be other occasions when it's a little bit warmer. Thank you.
As we have Mr. Egenhofer for only a couple of minutes more, just a quick question to the audience, if you have any questions for Mr. Egenhofer. Can we have the microphone, please, for the audience?
Finally, the foundation will be for a responsible society. It will be a short comment and a short question. The comment is that I in fact want to thank Mr. Egenhofer for his engagement in this not at all easy venture. Our foundation is very much involved in advocacy for opening the path of the Western Balkans into the EU ETS. And this is where my comment is coming up. I have to underline that this advocacy did, in fact, manage to achieve some results. And first time this year, the annual report of the European Commission on the progress of Western Balkans as candidate countries or already in the accession process. For the first time ever, it was mentioned that these countries should join the EU ETS. Why are we so much insisting on this, on opening this? Because we fully believe that this would be the first practical step in the state succession process. And both citizens and the decision makers are having only positive outcome from this process. So this is what I think is one of the most important arguments for advocating to join the EU by joining this first very important step, and that, of course, provide much more stable energy supply and energy security. My question to Mr. Egenhofer is, how do you see whether there is an understanding, at least in some parts of the Brussels crowd, that this effort also adds to the strengthening of the rule of law and human rights, especially when we think about defossilization and thus making the human security much more clear on the
thing. Yeah. Thank you for this question. I think it was very, prominent. You got applause for it. I'm not sure whether I get applause for my answer. You have this situation where you have two distinct communities, in silos. You have the general political, enlargement discussions, which are about the chapters, about the right, about the rule of law, etc., which is currently one of the three top priorities. Rule of law is one of the three overriding issues, so that takes most of the attention. And then you have something practical, concrete, very technical, all these strange people, having their own jargon, which is something different, and the two are not yet connected. So we need to somewhere bring the top political level to have this sentence, which you mentioned, very important, each time in each speech, it should be there and say, yeah, enlargement, and one of the gradual accession point could be the ETS, and then we get the traction. So far, that hasn't been the case, and my assumption is also from the Western Balkan countries, there has been nothing brought. It's two things, here the Energy Law Association talks about it, and in parallel, probably somebody else talks about some chapters of which, and they don't know even that this idea exists. So one would be that, and the other to implant it from the Brussels end. The RCC could be a major organization to hammer on the table and making sure that in all the speeches that sentence is in there. We could also work through the new commissioners now. And I believe the really most important part is to work with the help of our Central and Eastern Southeast European member states, which are much more familiar with the situation here than many of our Nordic or Southern member states are.
EFE Group, Energy Finance and People. The question regarding your statement on the presentation, you see a very large discrepancy between the efficiency of EU ETS and a local, let's say a regional or a country ETS. If we take into consideration that last May in Brussels, Ms. von der Leyen expressly said that basically EU ETS has failed for 17 years now, but you guys have to keep doing something and they have to keep doing something. Why would you see a local ETS less efficient than a 17-year proved inefficient solution that we're still trying to keep running? Thank you.
I'm not sure what von der Leyen said or meant. I would not think that the ETS now is not running. It has a price of 60, 70, and with the price of 60, 70, coal goes out just like this. Huh? So that was the main driving force for it. You have the industrial part. You can argue about this, but this is so far until the end of the decade covered by the free allocation. So the industrial competitiveness is not jeopardized until the end of the 20s. I mean, I would really very violently disagree that the system is not working. Now, because I assume it's working, then it would of course make sense to add on. Like Switzerland, Norway, Iceland have done, they have linked to it. And the answer why a regional would not work is exactly in the history of the ETS. In the end, in the beginning, prices were very low because it's politically very, very difficult to get these prices. You only get this in the longer run. You know, how do you can set up an ETS in the Western Balkan and tell companies the price will be 30, 40, which means all the inefficient lignite plants will stop immediately. So the idea of the ETS has always been you start to put a cap and then over the years the prices increase so that you can prepare. Now the system is up and running, and you know why reinventing the wheel? Of course, you know, a lot of people, you know, make a lot of money, a lot of living on reinventing the wheel, but the wheel is running, it's running smoothly. And you just, you know, add on to this or hook yourself onto this. I'm not saying there is a full integration, but we have said there would be a kind of a modernization fund, a very specific chapter for Western Balkan, tailor-made to address the issues. You know, a price of 80 euros, of course, would be a disaster for the whole power sector here. Now you need to use it free allocation to keep the sector running and then give the incentives in the next 10, 12 years. People think, do I continue? Do I invest in you? So that is the thing behind. If you ask me if there's a regional ETS, the price will never go up more than 4 or 5 euros. At best, maybe it goes to 10. At 10, you have no impact on anything except the prices of the energy goes up and the compensation from the national budget of the countries goes up with it.
Do we have any further questions, or can we let Christian go to the airport?
Thank you. We'll raise the glass, you know, at the birthday. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming to us again. Wow. In her very proactive way, Ms. Licht has actually stated a couple of comments earlier, but what I actually wanted to do at this point in the panel was to really use the opportunity and thank the Belgrade Fund for Political Excellence for their support, both this year in this conference, but generally of our association, and invite her if she would like to say a few words on the involvement of the fund and their engagement with our association. Can you please hand the microphone to Ms. Licht?
Thank you very much. I did not expect it at this other call. Well, very brief. The Belgrade Fund for Political Excellence, that was our previous name. We changed it someone, but kept the abbreviation in the name itself to make things more complicated, not for the sake of complication, but for the sake of the fact that in among everything else, exactly because for more than a decade intensively dealing with energy efficiency and topics related to energy transition, we came to the conclusion that Belgrade Fund for Political Excellence was a wishful thinking. We are far from political excellence, so we are now appealing to a responsible society to take over and to really make its best to achieve results in some of the most important issues that our region and our country faces, and we are convinced that energy transition is exactly one of those very important issues. And this is why we also support UPES. This is why we find the ways how to at least stand together and work together in order to achieve what is so necessary and so understandable, I'm sure, for the people in this room, but is much less paid attention from those who, in fact, as Christian said, are designing policies, both in Western Balkans and in the European Union. And it's not only Brussels, it is some of the important, I mean, they are all important, but some of the most influential countries as well, who are slow to understand that, among other things, what we will be able to demonstrate in the Western Balkans regarding the CBAM as well will be very, very important in another part of Europe where all the eyes are focused on, and that is Ukraine. And this is why I'm happy that in this particular session, Angelica, I don't want to take over your role, but that in this particular session,
Please feel free.
we will also have a colleague from Ukraine. He will talk exactly about the same problem and hopefully the same solutions that we are speaking here and hoping to achieve together with UPES and a number of experts and organizations we are involved in fighting a difficult battle toward genuine defossilization and energy transition, which we find at least as important as the reform of law. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Licht. We will now be proceeding with the remainder of our panel. And I don't know about you, but for me, a lot of the UPES events, whenever I go away from them, I feel like I have a lot of homework. And I always get so much inspiration from the people that we meet, and just resonating from what Branislava said at the beginning, just the fact that we are a very multidisciplinary association. It's lawyers, it's engineers, it's people who are from all industries, because we are ultimately all interested in decarbonization. Regulating it is such a controversial topic that on very many roundtables, we get to argue about the very term decarbonization. There was a gentleman from the physics faculty who had such a strong opposition because we are all made of carbon, and what do you mean we need to decarbonize? So in this arena where we all have our various opinions on decarbonization, I would like to agree with Mr. Egenhofer, well on his way to the airport, that we need to develop and we need to implement local solutions. But in order to do that, we need to have a high-level dialogue of people from all sectors in order that we have solutions that actually work locally on our market. To learn, we need to look at neighboring markets, we need to look at more developed markets. And it is my great pleasure that we have today an expert joining us remotely, Mr. Stanislav Zinchenko, who is the CEO of GMK Center. He is the chair of the Committee for Environment and Sustainable Development of the European Business Association, but he is also president of the Chamber of the Ukrainian Roundtable. Getting a Ukrainian perspective on the impact and the challenges of CBAM regulation will certainly be invaluable for us, and I look forward to the lessons that we will learn from him. I kindly ask Mr. Zinchenko to join us and to share with us his presentation. As you have noted, we unfortunately, due to different obligations, Mr. Gacevic will not be joining us. So I'm actually quite pleased that we will give more time to Mr. Zinchenko to go into details with their experience.
Do you hear me?
Yes, we hear you very well.
Thank you for inviting me. So I hope you see my screen and you hear me. So I'm glad to speak at this conference. It's very interesting was also to hear about your agenda. It's similar, of course, in Ukrainian. I think all European partners have the same challenges. So today I will speak to CBAM and our result of our study and understanding how it will impact on Ukrainian economy. So let's start. CBAM is a game changer for international trade. It will have different consequences to countries inside and outside European Union. For European Union countries, CBAM means increasing carbon costs and increasing prices on the domestic market. However, CBAM may help to create green markets as carbon-intensive import will decline, but it's still under question. For countries like Ukraine and other countries in Balkan, looks like a trade barrier, reducing access to European market. Accordingly, revenue from exports to European market will also decrease for such countries. Competition in the market that do not have their own CBAM regulation will increase, so producers who cannot comply with European environmental regulations will not have access to European market. In such way, CBAM in European Union will lead to the rebuilding of international supply chain. Many countries have already responded to CBAM introduction. The biggest opponents of CBAM are Brazil, South Africa, India, and China. Australia, USA, Canada, Taiwan, South Korea are discussing possible CBAM introduction too. So CBAM, European CBAM, open Pandora box. All other countries won't also introduce such instrument. So UK certainly plans to introduce CBAM in 2027. Many countries decided to develop their own domestic carbon pricing instrument, carbon tax or emission trading system, as a result of CBAM introduction in European Union. So we see that it will be not only problem or challenge for European Union or for export to European Union. New global trade agenda or green agenda as we wish this CBAM introduction. Now I talk about Ukrainian experience. Ukrainian authorities haven't expressed official reaction on CBAM in European Union. However, more than half of Ukrainian goods exports go to European Union. During the war, the European Union has become the main trade partner of Ukraine, considering blocked Ukrainian seaports. Export is vitally necessary for Ukrainian companies since it allows them to continue production activity, maintain employment, and support local economy. CBAM will create additional obstacles for Ukrainian companies. According to our calculation, CBAM may be applied to 17% of Ukrainian export to European Union. So CBAM may worsen state of Ukrainian economy. According to our first calculation made in 2020, Ukrainian energy sector was responsible for 30% of all CBAM payments related to Ukrainian exports. But during the war, Ukraine has lost a lot of generating capacities, first of all, coal generating capacities. So before the war, Ukraine had 47 gigawatt of power capacities. Now figures is about 22 gigawatt. Some power plants were damaged, some plants were occupied. So we can't talk about stable electricity export to European Union. Iron and steel industry of Ukraine will be the most hit by CBAM. Without energy export, 93% of Ukrainian export, which falls under CBAM regulation, is represented by iron and steel sector. It's quite alarming, considering the contribution of iron and steel industry to Ukrainian economy. Impact of iron and steel sector in 2023 in Ukrainian economy was 6% of GDP, and it was 15% of our export. So, and Ukrainian steel companies continue to invest and develop production also during war. So it will be very challenging. Also, you see that cement industry, fertilizer, aluminium will be covered by CBAM payment. And our export more than $3.6 billion will be under CBAM to European Union. Now, you must understand also that Ukrainian industry is very suffered from the war. When we look on the map, that you see that it's example of our steel industry, that it was 12 big steel plants. Right now, only 6 steel plants working, and we lost Mariupol plants. It decreased our steel capacity 40%. So right now, our capacity is only 17 million tons, and we produce only 6 million tons of steel. In Ukraine, 90% of steel produced using blast furnace way. This means high carbon intensity of products. So Ukrainian billets and long products will not be competitive compared to products produced via electric arc furnace route in European Union. Pig iron sales also could stop, as CBAM payment for pig iron could reach $150 per ton. So problem that CBAM will directly lead to losses in export and production in Ukraine. Annually, Ukrainian companies export to European Union about 60,000 also of different steel products, and like steel structure, containers, bolts, screws, and so on. So not only big steel producers, but also small and medium company will suffer from CBAM because of problem with reporting. Such companies need to provide data for CBAM reports. It increased administrative expenses for small and middle exporters, and CBAM regulation requires to collect a lot of data, including data about companies' activity and production output. And CBAM could become a new technical barrier for trade, also for small and medium business. Difficulties in providing data will negatively affect the prices of export products and willingness of importers to import. The losses from CBAM for Ukrainian economy will increase over time. In 2026, export losses may reach $200 million. In 2030, they will exceed 1.4 billion. And after 2030, Ukraine may stop exporting cement, fertilizers, pig iron, billets, and long steel products. GDP losses also will be greater, considering intersectoral links in Ukrainian economy. In 2026, Ukraine may lose 800 million of GDP. In 2030, it can be 1.4 billion of GDP. So, of course, CBAM is not only issue of economic losses. CBAM creates risk for further integration of Ukraine into European Union. CBAM will lead to decreased volume of trade between Europe and Ukraine. From our point of view, integration means not agreement and paper signing, but growing trade between countries. So Ukraine is preparing to become a EU member. Our country adapts legislation to European standards. For example, Ukraine has already launched a system for monitoring, reporting, and verification of carbon emission. We developing our local emission trading system, implementing all requirements of European legislation. Ukraine will have the same regulation field as the European Union. So our country will not create any carbon leakage risk for the European Union. But it's a big problem that war caused big economic losses for Ukraine. But we see that CBAM, at the end of the day, can stop our economy, and we cannot invest in our decarbonization because of war. So, of course, Ukraine needs time to adopt European regulation, and this time could be provided through temporal exemption from CBAM. Article 30.7 of CBAM regulation envisages that European Commission can change CBAM application approach for countries which face it unforeseeable, exceptional, and unprovoked event, which destructive consequences. So Russian invasion and the resulting damage to Ukrainian fully satisfy the condition of this article. And so we hope that this argument will help Ukraine and European authorities to find a win-win solution regarding CBAM. So it's really a challenge. For Ukraine, it's a big challenge because of war also, not also because of losing some profit for our company. That's why open discussion with European Commission, we hope will help us to find a way to for this challenge and this problem. So it's everything from my short presentation, and I'm open for any question from your side.
Thank you very much, Mr. Zinchenko, from all of us sitting at the Serbian Chamber of Commerce. I kindly invite the audience to raise their hands if they have questions for Mr. Zinchenko. Okay, we do not have any questions for you at this time, but certainly if you have time, please stay with us for the rest of the conference.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we do have a question actually. So Branislava, please go ahead.
Thank you, Angelika. Regarding your presentation, maybe can you just underline to us regarding all these issues which are coming, CBAM effects to your economy and electricity, especially electricity sector, which is the, if I can say, the crucial for functioning in this CBAM relations, and also potential CBAM relations, and also how it is functioning. You just say that you establish something in your country, that it is some kind of carbon pricing on some kind of ETS. Can you somehow describe us more how it is working, and what is idea? Is it started already, or it is just idea? And if it is idea or started, please explain us the main
Okay,
elements.
it's not a problem. So first of all, we started already adopting our legislation to European in all green agenda from 2018, from our association agreement. Yeah. So because we have some obligation and so on. So first of all, we have very strictly roadmap for Ukraine for implementing all green agenda from European Union. Carbon tax existing in Ukraine without any free allowances, and company pay for every ton for emission. Yeah, of course it's not so big, but one more time, European companies have free allowances when you're talking not about energy, but we pay already carbon tax. Yeah, it's not so big, but exists. So we introduced and already functioned monitoring and verification system like in European Union. So we only one third country outside Europe and European Union that have the same monitoring and verification system of carbon emission. It the base from which European ETS was started 20 years ago. And our companies have obligation to make reporting according to this system and make obligation to verify their emission with European and Ukrainian verificators. So it's first. Then already Ukraine has accepted roadmap for ETS, Ukrainian ETS implementation. And start of next year, we will have Ukraine ETS law with our roadmap, how Ukrainian ETS will be developed. Because I'm a part and expert of this in our government, power market and CBAM, so we know that in 2028, when, okay, if war will stop 2025, so in 2028, Ukraine will start testing work of Ukrainian ETS system with the same, I would say, branches as in European Union. So of course, so pilot stage will start in 2028, and then 2033 will be first stage of full ETS functioning in Ukraine. We don't know when, in which moment Ukrainian CO2 prices will be the same as in European Union. It depends also on our possibility to get finance funds from Europe, because we understand that it's impossible to decarbonize our energy, steel, cement, fertilizer sector without any financial funding. So Ukraine, even before war, didn't have any additional financial resources to finance decarbonization. For example, I don't know if you know that last 1.5 years in Europe, in form of direct grants and subsidies, biggest steel plants had became more than 12 billion euro of direct finance subsidies from European governments. So nobody can compete with such support. That's why they will be leader in decarbonization. Yeah. So that's why, as I told you, also Ukraine right now in run to adopting. We have new law about best available technology. Yeah, it's about implementing best available technologies. It's already worked, and our companies have obligation in 5-7 years have the same technical standards for emissions in all main branches as in Europe. And right now in launch also updating national determined commitment NDC to Paris Agreement. So in 2025, our Minister of Environment plan to develop and approve new NDC for Ukraine. We need to change goals. We need to change some calculation because of war. 40% of Ukrainian industry and energy destroyed. So that's why we have many, how to say, plans to do, and it will be done. It's not only words, because all these goals are directly connected with Ukrainian facility plan. It's plan of financial support from European Commission for Ukraine during war. So if we will not achieve these goals, we will not have financial support. Yeah, and some small addition. And you must understand also when we're talking about energy, practically all our big coal energy plant was destroyed. Right now, that's why also Ukraine has new energy strategy that will be based on nuclear power and renewable energy. Even during war, Ukrainian companies, international companies, they investing in renewable energy, and we have some big launches of wind power generation plants. So even during war. So that's why we see that problem of CBAM or carbon price because of energy export in future from Ukraine to Europe will be not so big for us, because this export will be or nuclear energy or renewable energy. So it will be, how would say, clean energy export.
Thank you for your explanation. But one remark which you said that investment support from European Union for all future activities is very important, and it is something which also other countries in our region waiting for that or expecting that, but nobody knows will it come. Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If there are no further questions for Mr. Zinchenko, I am very pleased to actually, I think for one of the first times that we are organizing these conferences and the panel earlier and not be very late. So from my side, once again, I am always very inspired to spend the day with you, even if it's only a couple of times a year. Something that I like to think, and something that I feel like was echoed in a lot of the presentations, is that a lot of times we feel like we are planting seeds, although our generation will never really have the chance to enjoy the shade. We are actually planning for the shade for generations yet to come. The work that we need to do is very complex, it's very detailed, but it requires that all of us are bringing our best game forward, that we discuss and that we share the knowledge that we have. With that, I would like to close today's panel, the first one, and invite Mr. Damir Dizdarevic of the Belgrade Fund for Political Excellence to give us the lessons learned from this panel, so that we can all come away from it with perhaps some lovely conclusions. Thank you very much.
Pozdrav svima. Pravo da se zahvalim i na pozivu i na organizaciji i panelistima koji su već, Kristin je otišao, ne znam da li je i gospodin Zinchenko tu. Tako da ono što smo danas čuli, ja bih pre svega započeo sa jednim kontekstom pre svega. Znači, kontekst vremena u kojem živimo jeste da je dekarbonizacija nužnost. Znači, nju vodi finansijski sektor sa trilionima ili bilionima, kako već, koliko novcima zelenih kredita, i prosto ukoliko neka industrija želi da ostane kompetitivna, ona se mora dekarbonizovati, mora koristiti niskougljenične tehnologije. Znači, to je imperativ i privrednog razvoja i poslovanja. S druge strane, druga vrsta konteksta jeste i, da kažemo, geopolitički. Mi prosto u nekom trenutku biramo put gde ćemo ići i koje ćemo se carstvu prekloniti. Da li će to biti Evropska unija, da li će to biti neka druga strana. Naše strateško opredeljenje, barem zvanično, svakako jeste Evropska unija, i to podrazumeva i usklađivanje s njihovim pravnim tekovinama, što znači pre svega implementacija i krovne strategije razvoja Evropske unije, to je Evropski zeleni dogovor, koji je transponovan na neki način na zemlji Zapadnog Balkana kroz zelenu agendu. Znači, mi prosto i moramo doneti takvu odluku. Treći zaključak koji bih izneo jeste i prosto stanje u našem elektroenergetskom sistemu i energetskom sistemu uopšte u regionu. Nama dekarbonizacija nije samo potrebna zbog kompetitivnosti u tom kontekstu i zbog razvoja industrije, već nam je potrebna i zbog sigurnosti snabdevanja. Naše termoelektrane su poprilično stare i u poprilično lošem stanju, izuzetno su neefikasne. Pitanje je koliko rezervi uglja više imamo. Svi znamo da prosto da su rezerve sve manje i manje svake godine, i znamo da je Srbija konkretno uvezla u 2023. godini gotovo 600 miliona. Tako da dekarbonizacija ne predstavlja samo imperativ po pitanju kompetitivnosti, već i po pitanju ostvarivanja sigurnosti snabdevanja i funkcionisanja sistema i stabilnosti cele mreže. Sad, glavno pitanje je kako to postići, na koji način, odakle nam pare, što bi se na kraju uvek reklo. Pa sad, para nemamo, ali pare bi trebalo da dođu odnekle, i kako je i Kristijan lepo to rekao, nama više nisu potrebni podsticaji, niti nekakvi veliki međunarodni investicijni okviri, nama su potrebna sredstva. I to je jednostavno to. Kako ćemo to ostvariti? To je, mislim, on je iznao jedno svoje rešenje i mi prosto i zbog CBAM-a moramo uvesti neku vrstu mehanizma naplate, u idealnom slučaju kako bismo potpuno izbjegli taj mehanizam, u nekom gornjem slučaju kako bi isto nešto novca ostalo kod nas. Njegove ideje koju takođe i mi podržavamo jeste primeniti koncept faznog pristupanja u Evropsku uniju kao neki vid i političkog ustupka nama i iskazivanje prosto dobre političke volje i dokazivanje da Evropska unija zaista želi naš region da integriše u svoju uniju. Tako da taj neki ulazak u EU ETS bi možda bio idealno rešenje, onda bi se potpuno izbegao mehanizam SIBAM-a. Ne bismo morali ništa da platimo. Na taj način dobili bismo besplatne lokacije kroz taj posebni fond, gde bi naš energetski sistem dobio neku vrstu subvencija, da kažem tako, da bi prosto mogao da u kratkom pa i srednjem roku preživi i da se modernizuje na vreme i dekarbonizuje. I da bi prosto dobili pristup ogromnom tržištu i privrednom, ali i pre svega energetskom tržištu i finansijskom tržištu, da bismo zaista mogli da finansiramo mnoge projekte koje bi išle u pravac dekarbonizacije. S druge strane, kao što je Kristin spomenuo, ne postoji politička volja, to jest nije toliko vidljiva sa strane Evropske unije, ali ni sa strane zemalja Zapadnog Balkana, iako se intenzivno radi na tome. Tako da bi možda to drugo rešenje prosto i bilo da kreiramo nešto što je slično, što je pandan tome i da se možemo izuzetno lako integrisati u taj sistem i koji bi funkcionisao po istom ili sličnom principu, ali naravno uz mnogo nižu cenu ugljen dioksida po emisiji. I na kraju samo bih ukazao na prosto na jedan mehanizam SIBAM-a gde se zemlje koje su sad u procesu, da kažemo, pridruživanja i pregovaranja se nalazi između čekića i nakovnja prosto, jer želite ući u Evropsku uniju, ali mehanizam SIBAM-a vam predstavlja ne samo finansijsku i trgovinsku barijeru, već i jednu suštinsku barijeru za ulazak i integraciju. I to je izuzetno problematičan mehanizam koji bojim se da spajanje sektora električne energije neće biti dovoljno da ublaži posledice tog mehanizma, jer sve projekcije i prošle godine smo slušali upravo i ovde na ovoj konferenciji i Ministarstvo finansija, prosto procene su da će to biti par milijardi šteta u izvozu do 2030. godine, samo iz sektora električne energije, ukoliko se dobije izuzeće za njega, što je malo verovatno, šteta će također biti ogromna. Tako da, smatram da mi pod hitno moramo da krenemo u dekarbonizaciju i u implementaciju pravnih tekovina Evropske unije, upravo kako bismo izbegli naplatu mehanizma SIBAM-a i smatram da je pravi put i da je to jedna od ključnih lekcija, da je pravi put jeste ulazak u EU ETS sistem Evropske unije i smatram da treba da kreiramo prvo političku volju kod nas, u Srbiji, zatim i u regionu i da region istupi zajedno pred Evropskom komisijom, jer u tom slučaju onda moraju da nas slušaju. Tako da to je to od mene.
Ja se zahvaljujem Damiru na kratko iznetim naučenim lekcijama iz ove teme, iz ovih predavanja koje smo do sada čuli. Očigledno je da tema koju smo otvorili danas, a to je dekarbonizacija energetskog sektora, je jedno jako važno pitanje gde nemamo dovoljno odgovora, gde postoje razmatranje, očekivanja, ali gde je potrebno zaista da se preduzmu određene aktivnosti da bismo konačno našli odgovore. Kad nađemo odgovore, ako nismo zadovoljni s njima, radit ćemo da ih popravimo. Za sada smo negde između i to je možda jedna najteža situacija u kojoj možemo da se nađemo. Ono što još moram da kažem, jeste SIBAM problem, ali dekarbonizacija nije bitna samo zbog SIBAM-a. SIBAM je samo jedna mera, jeste da je teška, ali mislim da i zbog svih nas dekarbonizacija jako važna stvar kojoj treba da težimo, odnosno cilj, nije stvar, nego cilj kojem treba da težimo. Nije jednostavno, potrebne su značajne investicije, ali ako počnemo da se time bavimo, nekako ćemo i neka rešenja pronaći. Mi smo malo ranije završili ovu sesiju, tako da ja ću vas sada pozvati da odemo na našu kafe pauzu. Druga sesija će početi kako je planirano. Sticajem okolnosti gospodin Gačević nije mogao da dođe zbog određenih aktivnosti koje su bilo je neophodno da ode u Brisel, pa Evo, zahvaljujem se za sada. Nastavljamo narednu sesiju posle kafe pauze. Kafe pauza će biti poslužena ovde ispred sale. Dear ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, we shall continue with our conference. Session 2 is international agreements and their compliance in the light of electricity trade. I think that is very, very interesting topic with very open question also regarding market coupling, potential problem with this CBAM measure, how electricity market will functioning with all these things, especially as we know how electricity is fast when it is going between countries in the cross-border trade, you know. Now our moderator for the session 2 is Milica Pešterić. She is partner in Drašković, Popović and Partners law firm. She is UPES member, and she will moderate this very, very interesting topic regarding international trade, international contracts, but I don't want to spend more time. Please, Milica, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I will start in English because our first panelist is Mr. Graham Coop, my colleague from Pearson Mason's law firm, and then I will shift to Serbian for the remaining panelists as well. As you probably know, Graham is an expert in energy charter, and that's his, among other stuff, field of interest. So I would like to ask him a question on the energy charter future, the EU view on that, and the link between the EU, the energy charter, and the Southeast Europe. What is in context of climate change, and what is the perspective? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Milica. It's very nice to be working with you again. Thank you also to the Serbian Energy Law Association and to the other associations that have welcomed me to Belgrade and supported my coming here. Thank you very much to Branislava and to Alexander also for your warm welcome and for all your support for my work over the years, starting indeed from my days as General Counsel to the Energy Charter Secretariat, which goes back quite a long way. I was General Counsel there between 2004 and 2011, which is when I first had the chance to get to know your wonderful country full of resources and opportunities. So I'm asked to speak about the parallels between the Energy Charter Treaty and the legal regime which applies in the Southeast Europe region. This is a long topic, and I hope, Milica, that it's okay if I take a bit longer over my answer than you took over your question. The Energy Charter Treaty, as many people here, I'm sure most of you will know, is an international treaty that was signed in 1994 by nearly 50 states together with the European communities. Serbia is not and never has been a party to the Energy Charter Treaty, but it is an observer and has been an observer for a long time. It's arguably inherited its observership status from the former Yugoslavia, but at any rate, it's certain that it's been an observer for many years. And the Energy Charter Treaty was designed to create or encourage conditions of legal stability in all the countries which joined it, but particularly in those countries in Southeast Europe, Russia and the other former Soviet republics, including Central Asian countries, which needed high volumes of investment to develop their enormous energy resources. And without further ado, I'll jump straight to the provisions of the treaty that deal with investment protection. And here I'm looking at Part 3, Article 10 of the Energy Charter Treaty. The key provision is Article 10.1, which provides that each contracting party shall, in accordance with the provisions of the treaty, encourage and create stable, equitable, favorable, and transparent conditions for investors of other contracting parties to make investments in its area. And it then goes on to provide that this includes a commitment to accord at all times to investors of other contracting parties fair and equitable treatment. This language, with its emphasis on stability, is a key feature not only of the Energy Charter Treaty, but of many international investment treaties, bilateral and multilateral investment treaties, which were negotiated and signed in the late 1980s, the earlier 1990s, what we call the second generation treaties, or if you will, the high watermark for investor protection. Now, times have moved on a lot since then. The Energy Charter Treaty is the largest multilateral sector-specific investment treaty in the world. And it's unsurprising that it's led to the largest number of investor-state disputes. It's led to over 150 investor-state disputes. And in the early years of the Energy Charter Treaty, many of these disputes concerned hydrocarbon or fossil fuel investments, so that investors typically from Western fully developed economies which had invested in Southeast European or Central Asian economies, or of course in Russia, could invoke the provisions of the treaty to call governments of their host countries to account if they believe that the governments have not treated the investments fairly in accordance with international law. We move on, however. 30 years have gone by since the treaty was first signed. The treaty was signed at a time when fossil fuels were considered very important, renewable investments were considered less important, and climate change was not considered to be an immediate concern. Nonetheless, I find the treaty has in fact proved quite forward-looking in the sense that it, by providing that electricity is covered as an energy material or product under the treaty, it effectively protects not only fossil fuel investments, but also all energy investments whose objective is to produce electricity. And that includes, as you all know, most of the currently known forms of renewable energy investment, not all, but most. It covers, for example, solar photovoltaic installations, as well as wind farms and the more traditional hydroelectric generation projects. And indeed, many of the cases brought under the treaty in the last 15 years have concerned renewable investments. Now, there has developed a significant, how can I put this, pressure group or body of pressure groups, if you will, against investor-state arbitration in general, ISDS as we call it, and against the Energy Charter Treaty in particular. And this has resulted in two things. Firstly, it's resulted in a significant number of member states leaving the Energy Charter Treaty, along with the European Union as an international organization, making the decision to leave the Energy Charter Treaty. Some of these states have already left, others have given notice of withdrawal, and their withdrawal will become effective in the coming months. But it's also resulted in something else, and that is the adoptions post-2015 approximately of a push to supposedly modernize the Energy Charter Treaty, bring it more up to date with current conditions. As I've explained, I believe that the treaty first negotiated in 1994 was already quite forward-looking, but it's been suggested that it could be made more forward-looking. And so I will take, I can report, this is public information, but yesterday I was speaking at an Energy Charter Secretariat conference in Brussels, and the day before yesterday, the Energy Charter Treaty, the remaining Energy Charter Treaty member states adopted a package of amendments to the Energy Charter Treaty, which were designed to bring the treaty more into line with modern conditions. And the paragraph of Article 10, which I read to you 5 minutes ago, with its emphasis on stability and legitimate expectations, has been replaced by a much shorter sentence, which simply reads, each contracting party shall accord to investments of investors of other contracting parties and to such investors with respect to their investments fair and equitable treatment and full protection and security in its area. So much shorter, much more specific, and no longer any reference to stability. Now, I put it to you, and I don't think I'll have too many people disagreeing here, but you're welcome to disagree, that investors from foreign countries particularly, and particularly from foreign countries that are not very familiar with the host country's legal or political system, in fact require stability as a condition to be willing to invest. And that these changes are in fact a retrograde step so far as increasing foreign investors' willingness to invest in the countries concerned. And I fear that this applies at least as much to countries such as Serbia and other countries in the southeastern European region as it does to countries in the supposedly more developed economies of Western Europe. The difficulty is, as I see it, that the many countries have for centuries accepted that there is a kind of hierarchy of legal systems. Every country has its domestic legal system. There's also what we call the international legal system, international law, public international law, which regulates the relations of states among themselves, but also imposes obligations on states as to how they should treat private entities such as individuals and companies. The European Union, of course, has existed in one form or another since 1957, and the European Union has built up its own system of European law, or EU law, which is in a sense hierarchically superior to its member states' domestic legal systems. To my submission, there's in fact a threefold hierarchy, with international law at the top, then European law, followed by the domestic legal systems of European Union member states. And the European institutions have in many ways shown themselves reluctant to accept that hierarchy, in other words, reluctant to accept that they can be subject to any international legal obligations which are superior to the obligations of European Union law. And I feel that that poses a grave problem for not only investors in European Union states, but for investors who would wish to invest in third states with which the European Union has legal relationships. Of course, the European Union is not alone. We see many other countries, some of them perilously close to where we are now, which also have very little respect for international law. And I say some are close, some are far away. The United States, under several successive presidencies, has deliberately sabotaged the workings of the World Trade Organization by refusing to appoint appellate panel members. However, it's with European Union initiatives that we're principally concerned for the purposes of decarbonization in the Western Balkans. And I would like to mention a couple of illustrations of the European Union's, or rather the European Commission's behavior towards the Energy Charter Treaty before moving on to the more specific instances of its behavior in relation to the West Balkans decarbonization initiatives. In relation to the Energy Charter Treaty, as I said, the European Union, along with its member states, were all parties. They all signed up in 1994, the European communities, along with their then 15, I think it was only 12 member states in 1994. They all signed up because it was considered that the subject matter of the treaty was a matter of mixed union member state competence. Since then, the number of European Union member states has grown, but also the extent, the subject matter extent of European Union competence has grown as a result of various treaties, including the Lisbon Treaty and the European Commission's interpretation of these treaties. And so the European Union, or the European Commission, has become more and more keen on exercising full competence under the Energy Charter Treaty on behalf of its member states. Now, in early 2004, the European Union, the European Commission issued a proposal, even though it had already decided to leave the Energy Charter Treaty at that point. It issued a proposal that the EU and all its member states should issue an Article 17 notice denying benefits under the Energy Charter Treaty to mailbox companies owned or controlled by investors from Russia or Belarus. I'm not here to discuss the political desirability or otherwise of this. I'm purely talking about the legal basis. The original proposal from the Commission provided that the Commission would issue this notice on behalf of the European Union and all of its member states, who are also member states of the Energy Charter Treaty. I wrote an article on this in Kluwer arbitration blog, which you can find. I think it's open source, and this was also republished on the Pinsent Mason's website on 16 July 2024, with one or two of my colleagues pointing out that the legal basis for the European Commission making this decision on behalf of all its member states was at best debatable. And you may call it coincidence, but the ultimate action did not take the same form. The European Commission gave notice on behalf of itself, and it also asked its member states to sign the notice, denying benefits under the ECT to investors from Russia and Belarus. And all but one of the European Union's member states went along with this proposal. I don't need to name this one state. It's a state that's demonstrated an interesting combination of obstinacy and independent thought. I'm trying to be neutral. So the European Union has, to some extent, acted as if it owns the Energy Charter Treaty. This has been seen in the decision I've been referred to. It's been seen in the position that it's taken in many Energy Charter Treaty arbitration cases. And it's even been seen in the European Commission's approach to the recent modernization package, which was unanimously approved the day before yesterday. At the conference meeting that took place the day before yesterday, the European Commission, contrary to its usual habit, did not in fact vote on behalf of its member states. It allowed its member states to vote for themselves. However, it did issue a council decision telling them how to vote, so that they weren't really left free to vote for themselves, at least not in the opinion of the European Commission. And this council decision directs the member states that the member states that are contracting parties to the ECT and that are present at the conference shall, acting jointly, exercise their vote at the Energy Charter Conference so as not to prevent the adoption by the conference of the modernisation package. Now, as the modernisation package can only be adopted if everyone votes in favour or at least does not vote against, and as moreover, more than 50% of the member states have to vote in favour, this did not in fact leave the European Union member states with very many options, and I understand that they all did in fact vote in favour. They understood the implicit message. I now come to the particular issues which we have in the West Balkan region, and I'd like to focus particularly on the carbon border adjustment mechanism, which several speakers have already addressed, and I won't go over everything which they have said. But the carbon border adjustment mechanism, or the CBAM, has been somewhat controversial, particularly in light of the legal basis on which the European Union claims to have adopted it. It was claimed at the outset that this was essentially an environmental initiative with fiscal consequences, because as we all know, it results in the imposition of what amount to tariffs on carbon-intensive imports from third countries, the costs of which need to be borne ultimately by European Union manufacturers and consumers. There's been a number of disputes about the true nature of the CBAM initiative, and these disputes have led to quite a few positions being taken about whether the CBAM really is essentially an environmental initiative or rather a fiscal initiative. And the difference is significant because, again, as many people here know, environmental initiatives can be introduced through a qualified majority, while fiscal initiatives require unanimity. The Polish government brought a case against the European Parliament and Council in August of 2023, alleging that the provisions of the contested regulation establish a new public charge and that therefore the regulation is primarily fiscal and should have been approved unanimously and not by the majority that was actually obtained. The result is that Poland has brought this case before the Court of Justice of the European Union. The case was only brought in August of last year, and so I understand we're still many months, if not a few years, away from a decision on this case. Nonetheless, the approach of the European Union, which consists in essentially defining for itself the legal basis of many of its actions, without regard to the opinions of any independent observers, gives cause for serious concern with regard to the effect of its actions on investments, not only within the European Union, but as has been explained in neighbouring regions such as the region of southeastern Europe. I think that probably brings me to the end of everything I really wanted to say directly, but I'm always very happy to take any questions or respond to the observations of other speakers.
Thank you, Graham. Yeah, this was really interesting, particularly this CBAM part, because we will have more words on that in the course of this panel. Now I would like to hear Mr. Davor Pupovac from UPES EPS. He is the director of market analyst, and now I will turn to Serbian because we are Serbian speaking. Dobar dan I hvala vam. Evo, možemo li čuti više o evropskom tržištu električne energije, našem i market couplingu i svemu što ste planirali da nam kažete u ovom trenutku s obzirom na izmene zakona?
Dobar dan svima, hvala na pozivu još jednom organizatorima konferencije. Ja sam mislio da ću ja možda biti posle kolega Ljubina koji će dati možda širi, ali
izvinjavam se,
ali ne, možda da bude ovako, pa će kolega Ljubin da se nadoveže na mene. Ja sam hteo da u ovom delu dam neke iskustva koje EPS imao u prethodnom periodu, znajući za uvođenje SIBAM-a koje sad se čini kao realnost i što će značajno da utiče na poslovanje EPS-a. Možda se krene na sledeći slajd. Da, možete dati, odlično. Ovdje se to, tako je. Pa ne, bi imati samo 3 slajda, možete i vidjeti tamo kad nije problem. Samo želim kratko da kažem od perioda liberalizacije tržišta, trgovina električnom energijom na tržištu, a to je deo EPS-a koga ja dolazim, predstavlja značajan deo poslovanja EPS-a. Prva stvar je možete plasirati svoje viškove po fair tržišnim cenama, a druga stvar koja nije manje bitna što možete da optimizujete vaš portfolio proizvodni. To ranije nije bilo moguće dok se nisu uspostavile berze u regionu i u Srbiji naravno i vi ste sada imate mogućnost da vaš portfolio, vaš portfelj koji zavisi od potrošnje, od proizvodnje, možete da prilagodite tako da možete koristiti trenutke niskih cena na tržištu, da kupite električnu energiju i recimo da prodajete električnu energiju kad su cene mnogo više. Sad, uvođenjem SIBAM-a dobijemo dodatnu taksu, namet, fiskalno kako bilo, čuli smo prethodno, i to značajno utiče na naše prihode. Ovdje je data prilično gruba procena, ali kao ilustracija je dobra da vidite u zadnje 3-4 godine koliko je EPS izvozio direktno u Europsku uniju. EPS je, napisao sam tamo, aktivan već tržištem Europske unije još od 2015. godine na berzi u Mađarskoj koja je naša referentna berza za ovaj region, a od 2017. u Hrvatskoj i Sloveniji. Naravno da smo aktivni od početka na berzi u Srbiji. Kad se bavite trgovinom, bitno je da imate diversifikaciju svog portfolija. Ako radite samo na jednom tržištu, vrlo je moguće da tržište koje je manje likvidno ćete da oborite cene, podignete cene, tako da od starta je EPS zauzeo stav da idemo na više tržište organizacije. To se pokazalo kao dobro. Berza u Mađarskoj najlikvidnija, zatim sledi Hrvatska berza i Srpska berza, naravno svake godine povećala likvidnost. Vidite tamo da imali smo godine kad smo imali jako visoke izvoze u Europsku uniju, to je direktno radimo preko naše ćerke firme koja je aktivna u Europskoj uniji i kad pogledate tamo koji je iznos izvoza, na sljedećem slajdu će biti finansijski aspekt SIBAM-a. I vidite da su to značajne količine. Pored EPS-a, električnu energiju izvoze i ostali nezavisni proizvođači u Srbiji kojih ima zadnjih godina. A pored toga, pored energije koja je prodana na berzi, mi znamo, na berzi u Srbiji, znamo da većinski ta energija ode opet u Europsku uniju najvećim delom, jer onaj ko kupuje na berzi na Sepexu, da ovu energiju prodaje tamo, to su najlikvidnija tržišta. Također bitan aspekt SIBAM-a je Srbija kao centralno pozicionirana zemlja sa 8 granica ima veliku količinu tranzita električne energije koja ide za Europsku uniju. Ovdje je dat grubi prikaz koji se slaže sa podacima koje je naš operator tržišta dao. Vidite koje su to količine energije. Ako mi izvozimo 2 terawatt-časa, to je neki 19 do 20 terawatt-časova, desi se da ide tranzit preko naše zemlje. To će biti isto jedan dodatni trošak za sve učesnike na tržištu. Nije jasan tretman, dođe kolega Ljubin kasnije kaže, tranzita. Rečeno da će on biti izuzet, ali kako će to da se dokaže, kako će to da se prijavi, to je izuzetno kompleksna stvar. Sljedeći slajd ćemo da vidimo otprilike procenat koliko je za nas uticaj SIBAM-a. Mi smo od kraja, znači 23. godine bili obavezni da prijavljujemo količine koje smo izvezli u Europsku uniju i to je proces koji je za nas prilično jednostavan, koji možda neće biti jednostavan za kompanije koje izvoze druge proizvode u Europsku uniju. Nije bilo obračuna tog troška, jer još uvijek nije napravljena metodologija kako će se računati cena CO2, rečeno je negde da će to biti kvartalna prosječna cena. Mi smo dali neku računicu na osnovu mesečnih cena CO2, na grafiku imate te podatke i vidite da recimo u godini kad smo imali možda i rekordni izvoz u Europsku uniju, da bi 2/3 tog zarade bi bilo plaćeno za SIBAM sertifikate, što je jako mnogo i naravno da mi možda promenili logiku prodaje, ne bi išli toliko tamo, ali svejedno bojimo se da bi cena na tržištu Srbije na našoj berzi reflektovala tu taksu. Tako je bilo uvijek u prošlosti kad su bile takse za izvoz, to je bilo u Bugarskoj i Rumuniji, uvijek tržište nađe ekvilibrijumna cena i verovatno bi cena u Srbiji bila mnogo niža od ostalih tržišta, jer jednostavno svi bi bili svesni da moraju platiti taksu na tu električnu energiju. Šta je još ono što nas možda boli, ali to je tako odlučeno, da je naš emisioni faktor 1, nešto. Mi smo se sve nadali da će to biti jednak našem miksu, jer ipak mi jesmo dominantno, proizvodimo energiju iz uglja, ali ipak imamo veliku delu obnovljivih izvora i on pogotovo što godinama raste. Također uzete prosjek za zadnjih 5 godina, što opet nije možda dobro, ne reflektuje naše investicije koje su bile velike obnovljive izvore, ne samo EPS-a, nego ostalih privatnih investitora s kojima mi uspešno sarađujemo, energiju otkupljamo balansirano, znači mi stalno povećavamo naš obnovljivi miks u portfoliju, a to se reflektuje, ispada da nas kažnjavaju što investiramo u to. Jednostavno, to je nešto, imate sličnu situaciju i dali smo primjer Bosne i Crne Gore gde su također imaju drugačiji miks, imaju velike udeo hidroenergije, međutim i oni moraju da plaćaju taksu, iako može sad sledeći slajd, većina izvoza iz ovog regiona je u godinama vrlo dobre hidrologije. Znači mi kad izvozimo električnu energiju Europske unije, to je uglavnom iz obnovljivih izvora energije, može neko da ospori tu tezu, ali tako je. I onda je sve to nešto što nam se čini da je nepravedno. Zemlje članice energetske zajednice očekivalo se vjerojatno da će imati neki povoljniji režim, pogotovo što je integracija tržišta, ja ne ponavljam, sve već rečeno pre sektora energetike veoma dobar, mislim da smo na tom polju napredniji nego u mnogim drugim poljima, možda grešim, jer smo praktično u svim aspektima integrisani, samo je trebalo da se kaže to je sve završeno i idemo u market coupling sa tržištem Europske unije, to je možda o market couplingu možda da kažem kasnije, ali CBAM definitivno ugrožava market coupling koji je po meni samo stvar tehnike, jer je sve već postavljeno i to je samo stvar procedura koju treba da se završe. Tako da, ovo je samo kratko šta to utiče na EPS direktno, a indirektno utiče na celu privredu, to je vjerojatno i razmatra u drugim konferencijama, tako da je to stvarno nešto što treba da vodimo računa u budućnosti. Evo za početak toliko. Hvala.
Hvala vama. Sad izvinjavam se ako sam poremetila koncept prezentacije. Sad ćemo čuti gospodina Ljubomira Popovskog, doktora ČEZ Srbija. Pretpostavljam da nastavimo o istoj temi.
Dobar dan svima, ja sam Ljubim Popovski kao predstavnik kompanije ČEZ i sad mogu da kažem da sam zastupnik kompanije POP ČEZ ESCO. Ovo je kao jedna od posljedica ovoga CBAM-a što nam se uvodi, gdje se mijenjaju strateške odluke kompanija i politika kako će raditi i upravljati u regionima za koje oni smatraju da imaju velike emisije gasova CO2 i što utiče na njihovo poslovanje. To ću kasnije reći koje su uglavnom te posljedice. Kako funkcioniše taj CBAM i mi to gledamo kao jednu vrstu mere ili načina kako bi Evropska unija osigurala da proizvodi energije koja dolazi sa ovih područja, kako oni zovu trećih zemalja i ne članica Evropske unije, dođe sa većim emisijama. I to normalno nije dozvoljeno prema njihovim ekološkim standardima. Taj CBAM je, kao što je rečeno, taksa na uvoz tih proizvoda kako bi se ostvarila ravnoteža u pogledu emisija između proizvoda proizvedenih unutar Evropske unije i onih uvezenih sa ovih. To sve normalno djeluje i na kontekst trgovine električne energije i na same trgovce električnom energijom, kao što je naša kompanija i mnoge druge koji su se registrovale i etablirale na ovim prostorima i učestvuju u trgovini, a to se normalno odnosi i na naše elektroprivrede, ne samo EPS-a, nego i sve ostale elektroprivrede u regionu Makedonije, Bosne i Hercegovine, Crne Gore i tako. Svi ovi trgovci električnom energijom, pa i te elektroprivrede, bit će podložni uvođenjem CBAM taksi koje su nastale u ovim zemljama. Što se tiče procjenjivanja emisija, kako bi se izračunala ta taksa, ja ću malo ovdje generalnije rečeno, pa dobro je što je kolega iznio neke brojke, pa ćemo se povezati eventualno na te proračune kasnije. Kako bi se izračunala ova taksa, važno je odrediti koliko CO2 je emitovano tokom proizvodnje električne energije. Sami znamo da to zavisi od vrste izvora energije i emisionih faktora. Vrste izvora energije koji je korišćen u ovim zemljama i izvoznicima, na primjer električna energija proizvedena iz uglja bit će normalno opterećena većim emisijama CO2, dok i obnovljivih izvora povoljnija i faktički jednaka nula. Emisioni faktori su specifični za različite vrste proizvodnje električne energije. U tabeli su date neke uobičajene vrijednosti zemalja o vrijednosti emisija CO2 za fosilna goriva, ugalj, za lignit, kao što je spomenuto, emisija je od 0,9 do 1,2. Vidimo da su nas svrstali naš Srbiju i zemlju Balkana kao 1,2, sad se ja neke obračune pravio sa 0,9, 0,95, tako da kažem, ali oni su bili još rigorozniji. Uzimat će se u obzir normalno i energetski miks, prosječne vrijednosti po regionima je u Evropi je 0,25, Srbija je približno 0,5, a globalno je 0,45, znači da smo tu veoma blizu. Taj obračun CBAM takse moraju jednostavno sve te kompanije, kao mi sami trgovci, tako i same elektroprivrede u našoj zemlji i u regionu, moraju da prate i da prijave te količine emisija koja je proizvedena tokom proizvodnje te energije. CBAM se obračunava tako što je taksa ekvivalentna cijeni emisija CO2 koja je utemeljena na tržištu emisijskih dozvola unutar EU, to su ETS trading sistem, a može se koristiti i neke druge konsultantske analitičke agencije koje su se specijalizovale za analizu ovih emisija CO2 u proizvodnji energije, a posebno i u trgovini za različite proizvode, kao što su Bloomberg, ali najčešće internacionalne energetske agencije koriste se ti rezultati. Svi ti trgovci moraju da se bave, koji se bave trgovinom, moraju da dostavljaju te podatke o emisijama CO2 koju uvoze iz ovih zemalja. Ovaj izveštaj mora biti verifikovan i usklađen sa svim standardima Evropske unije za energiju koja dolazi iz ovih područja. To znači da je potrebno dokumentovati to. Omogućena su i eventualna izuzeci i sniženja za određene zemlje koje su eventualno već ugradile neke takse ili regulative za prikupljanje tih fondova i sredstava mnogo ranije i tako, ali svjedoci smo da to kod nas nije slučaj, tako da se kod nas taj CBAM računa u punom iznosu. Koje su sad tu mogućnosti eventualno za trgovce električnom energijom kao što je naša kompanija ili elektroprivrede iz regiona? Jednostavno da se prilagode ovim novim pravilima CBAM-a i to na sljedeće načine. Jer vidimo da onaj tracker za primjenu ovoga CBAM-a i spremnosti zemalja neminovno otkucava i broje se jednostavno dani. To se kad se otvori sajt Evropske zajednice može vidjeti koliko nam je dana ostalo, sati, minuta, jednostavno i sekundi do uvođenja ovih taksi, što po meni jednostavno predstavlja nekakav pritisak na sve te zemlje. Više bi volio da to izgleda da nam otkucavaju vrijeme kad bi bili primljeni u Evropsku uniju, nego da nam otkucavaju kad će nam uvesti ove takse i tako. Znači da bi se prilagodili tim CBAM taksama koje će neminovno biti uvedene, potrebno je investiranje u čiste izvore energije, uvođenje tehnologija za smanjenje emisija kao što su energetska efikasnost i skladištenje energije i diversifikacija izvora energije. Pa svjedoci smo, evo to su i prethodno spomenule kolege u elektroprivredama da se radi na tome, to je izgradnjom novih obnovljivih izvora na postojećim rudnim nalazištima, kopovima. To je situacija u svim zemljama, intenzivno se radi u BiH, Makedoniji, tako. Što se tiče nas, naše kompanije u Češkoj, mi smo to davno počeli. Jednostavno kad se formirao onaj zeleni Green Deal i tada je Češka počela da ulaži i diversifikuje svoje proizvođačke kapacitete. Kakve bi posljedice mogli imati ti trgovci električne energije uvođenjem tog CBAM-a? Oni uvođenjem CBAM-a jednostavno će se suočiti sa nekoliko značajnih kao što su u smislu poslovanja, ja bih rekao najprije, tako i u pogledu ekološke odgovornosti i eventualno nekih konkurentskih prednosti. Povećanje troškova uvoza, to je definitivno i trgovci koji uvoze energiju iz ovih regiona će se susresti sa novim taksama koje će biti zasnovane na emisijama CO2 i kao posljedica može rezultirati većim cijenama za njihove krajnje potrošače. Jednostavno će morati prodavati tu električnu energiju i sami mi trgovci koji je izvozimo u Europi bi je eventualno prodavali i prenosili na naše krajnje potrošače. Tako da jednostavno morali bi biti primorani da prilagodimo svoje poslovne planove, strategije, obezbedimo povoljnije uslove energije kako bi minimizirali sve te troškove. Potrebna je veća transparentnost i izvještavanje. Znači, trgovci će biti u obavezi da prate emisije CO2 povezane sa proizvodnjom električne energije koju uvoze. To podrazumijeva prikupljanje podataka o emisijama za svaku količinu koja se uvozi, verifikaciju tih podataka od strane nezavisnih tijela, što znači uključuju se nove ličnosti, novi akteri koji sve to treba da odrade i izvještavanje jednostavno prema EU vlastima o količini emisijama i vezi sa njima. Posljedica svega ovoga će biti jednostavno da će se povećati drastično administrativni troškovi i zahtjeva će to dodatnu infrastrukturu za praćenje emisija, što može biti normalno izazovno za sve ove male trgovce, male elektroprivrede koje nemaju eventualno sredstava i mogućnosti da isprate sve te zahtjeve. A također može doći do značajnog opterećenja u pogledu usklađivanja sa novim regulatornim standardima, jer to može dovesti do neusaglašavanja sa lokalnim propisima, regionalnim, evropskim, tako dalje, da sve to treba biti ispraćeno, pošto je ovo udruženje UPEX jednostavno i sa pravnog tačke gledi. Ovdje je navedeno posljedica bi bila i povećana konkurencija. Ta konkurencija se ogleda, ne bih rekao možda konkurencija za neke i smanjenje mogućnosti te konkurencije, jer ove zemlje koje nemaju te CBAM imat će jednostavno prednost u odnosu na trgovce koje koriste ta fosilna goriva. Znači, mogu je prodavati svoje proizvode po jeftinijoj cijeni na tržištima kojima je to prihvatljivo. Potrebno je također usklađivanje sa EU, sa ITS standardima, jer trgovci koji uvoze električnu energiju zemalja sa visokom emisijom zbog plaćanja dodatnih taksi može dovesti do rasta cijene jednostavno u EU. Ako se ta električna energija uvozi ovdje sa svim tim taksama. Poticanje globalnog smanjenja emisije, to je jedna posljedica na koje će biti prinuđene zemlje u kojima se primjenjuje ova CBAM, da jednostavno investiraju više u nove tehnologije. Također, trgovci energijom se mogu suočiti sa povećanom kompleksnošću u upravljanju lanca snabdijevanja. posljedice dolaze kao složenost i potrebe za novim sistemima za praćenje, izvještavanje i upravljanje podacima, što isto tako povećava troškove poslovanja. To su oni MVR programi koji su već uvodeni, najavljeni i tako. Detaljno su opisani kako sve to funkcioniše u direktivama i pravilnicima Evropske unije i komisije i energetske zajednice, sve to da. Pa kao zaključak bi stavio da jednostavno za trgovce električnom energijom SIBA predstavlja nekakav izazov jer uvodi sve te dodatne troškove i obaveze u vezi sa emisijama CO2, ali i priliku jednostavno za adaptaciju svog poslovanja kao održivim i ekološkim prihvatljivim praksama. A oni koji prepoznaju prednost u prelasku na obnovljive izvore energije ili energetske efikasnosti mogu imati jednostavno značajnije konkurentske prednosti na tržištu. Dao bih još neke primjere, na primjer izračunavanja emisija CO2 i CBAM troškova, to su jednostavne i proračuni za izvoz električne energije, na primjer s ovog područja VB6. Ukoliko imamo kao scenarij gdje termoelektrane koriste ugalj, može se vidjeti ulazni podaci su proizvedena i izvezena električna energija 1000 MW, emisija CO2 po jedinici bi bila, ja sam uzeo ovdje 1, kolega Davor je rekao da se mi tretiramo kao 1, 2, ali bez obzira čisto okvirno da se stekne utisak kolika bi to količina novca i kakav bi to sve proračun bio, šta sve treba da se uradi da bi se došlo do ovoga. Cena EU ETS sertifikata, to je nekakva trenutna vrijednost koja varira tako 90, 100, evo stavili smo 95. Nemamo nekih mehanizama za unaprijed plaćanje nekih taksi CO2 u našoj zemlji i u regionu, tako da je taj iznos 0 i jednostavno kada idemo po korak 1, obračun ukupnih emisija bi bila 1000 tona CO2 i trošak CBAM bi bio oko 95.000 evra. Sad kad to pomnožimo sa onih 2,5 izvoza koliko je imao EPS, dobit ćemo do tih 270 miliona, na primjer, ili zavisno od sezone i od godine. To sve treba da se radi faktički i mjesečno, dnevno, gdje svi mi imamo onaj rezidualni miks koji je javno dostupan, ima ga u svim zemljama objavljen je, tako da sve to treba da se uzima u obzir. Na primjer, kad bi radili izvoz sa CIPEX-a, jednostavno gdje tu ta električna energija, ne znamo odakle dolazi, onda bi tu koristili za obračun prosječnu emisiju CO2 po megavat satu otprilike 0,5 tona, tako da bi u konačnom obračunu dobili i vidjeli da je taj trošak za CBAM za one trgovce koji učestvuju na berzama, ta taksa bi bila nešto manja. Da ne kažem za one trgovce koji imaju već sključene PPA ugovore, eventualno direktno sa proizvođačima obnovljivih izvora, njima bi taksa bila značajno manja i jednostavno to je cilj i mogućnost da se izbjegnu ove takse. To je to. Ja se zahvaljujem, ukoliko ima nešto pitanja, možemo...
Hvala. Mislim da ćemo možda imati vremena za pitanja i za drugi krug prema satnici i nekog još, da kažem, komentara, tako da... Ali ste fino tamo završili s ovom prilikom da ko ima dugoročne PPA ugovore može da smanji ovaj trošak. Dakle, hvala. Koleginica Mira dolazi iz Grčke i dobro je da čujemo kako su iskustva u Evropskoj uniji po pitanju korporativnih PPA-eva, jer mi ovdje nemamo neko još uvijek bogato iskustvo i vrlo smo radoznali kako to funkcioniše, da ćemo uskoro morati i mi krenuti ovim putem, evidentno. Hvala. Aha, ne znam gdje je ono. Recimo u srednje
Dobro večer svima, drago mi je da sam ponovo ove godine sa vama u Beogradu na ovoj konferenciji kao već tradicionalno svake godine. Danas sam pripremila da vam pričam malo o IFET trade agreements. Nastavit ću na engleskom jeziku jer tako smo se dogovorili, a i slajdovi su pa da ne bi bilo malo ovih zabune. Što sad radimo ovdje? Ovo, jel? Aha, dobro. A, prema tamo. Ok. Malo ne radi. Odlično. Ovdje ćemo ukratko samo reći o sadržaju prezentacije. Prvo par reći samo o Evropskoj European Federation of Energy Traders, about its work, types of agreements, standardized agreements it has prepared in the past, and then the focus of the presentation will be about the power purchase agreements, and particularly the sample agreement prepared by IFET. Further, a little bit about the financial agreement and agreement with physical delivery, and some specific issues, concretely prices and amendments in law. Now, I will be very short about the federation. I think that IFET, you know, probably well enough that it is a federation of European traders established in 1999 for the purpose of preparing, among other, some solution that would be somehow standardized, that would enhance the trade, cross-border trades among the countries. That the members of the federation are companies. At the moment, from Serbia, there are 2 companies members of the federation, EPS and Rudnaka Group. Now, since that, IFET has prepared and are use several standard agreements for the delivering and acceptance of natural gas and credit exposure across the different contracts, renewable certificates and emission trading, and some specific contracts, more specialized. And finally, most recently, power purchase agreement for corporates and utilities. This is how they have named it. Now, the agreement does not have definition of PPA, but it is quite clear what it is. Agreement about the trade, the sale of electricity between the producer, mostly RES producers, and the buyer. RES directive, EU directive does have a definition, which is a little bit maybe complex, but does not change the substance of it. When somebody starts looking at PPA agreements, one will always immediately notice that there are so many names and terms that are used, and it may sometimes be confusing. Some of them are legal, more of them are commercial, and sometimes we even don't know what are we speaking about just by using the term. Here is a very short collection of probably not all of the terms used in the market, plus among the lawyers, but you will have the idea. One term is private buyer. That would be the simplest form that does not even use the grid. It is a direct line between the producer, RES producer, and the consumer. Then we have corporate PPAs that are generally considered to be between agreement on sale of electricity between the producer, often a RES producer, and corporate consumer. Corporate consumers are in practice very often industry, particularly energy consuming industry, but all and more, there are some other big consumers that can be supermarkets, malls, and I don't know, state buildings and anybody else that can suit this. Another type would be utility PPA. It's a little bit not so direct, a little bit more complex, and this is between the producer and the utility or the trader or the supplier from one side, and because we have here two agreements, because we have the middleman, which is the supplier, and on the other side, the consumer and the supplier. Okay, another, let's say, the classification would be the different types of PPAs with physical delivery. And you will now see the overlapping. One is sleeved. It is a quite common use of the term. And this is when we have the utility or the supplier in the meantime, because it is dragged from the producer to the supplier and then to the consumer. Then we have another one, retail would be when there is only two counterparties, producer and consumer. There is one small group on site, which is basically self-consumption, when you have on your own site the production and the consumption. Now, financial, or they are also named virtual PPAs or synthetic PPAs. In this type of agreement, there is no physical delivery, and they are used for securing, for covering the main risk that there is regarding the PPAs, because they are long-term agreements and they have to have a certain price, while the price of the electricity markets is quite variable. So the financial agreements, according to effect sample, are among the same producer and consumer, buyer, let's be more precise, while in practice you can have among many other participants of the trade market. In this type of agreements, you have two prices. One is contract price and one is price of the reference market or some other index, in which case one party is paying to the other party the difference of the quantities and the difference in the price multiplied with the difference in the price on a certain period on the market. This is why in this way it is hedging the contractual price of the delivery PPA. But in practice, it is much more complex than this as a sample, that because what is now presented is one physical delivery and one financial agreement. The truth is that on the bottom of every or number of financial agreements, you have to have delivery agreement, because if nothing else, it is because of the quantities. Now, from the commercial structure, these agreements these are just some of them. In practice, there are a lot of combination of it. One is pay as produced, which means that the agreement obliges the producer to sell whatever it produces and the buyer to purchase everything. Aha, okay. And the buyer to purchase everything that has been produced. This is, of course, very favorable for the producer, not for the buyer. And it depends on their positions, whether they could agree on this one. And of course, in practice, very clear, rarely you could have a clear pay as produced. Pay as nominated is the producer is obliged to sell certain quantities either agreed in advance or according to a forecast that is going to be in certain periods of time in the future, daily, weekly, monthly, or so. Then we have fixed, shaped, or baseline type of commercial agreement, in which they agree to certain minimum quantity that the buyer will need, and then it is combined with some other agreements. And as consumed, this is very difficult for the producer because it obliges to secure the energy, whatever the buyer needs to be secured by the producer, which is naturally not possible by his own production. So the producer in this case need the assistance and further agreements with the suppliers or traders. Now, the IFET sample agreement basically tries to catch it all these different types of commercial types and types of agreement. It's one sample agreement that covers both physical delivery and financial agreement. It consists of three parts. The first part is individual term agreement, in which parties have the choice to select and to fill in, of course, their data and whatever is commercially relevant for this agreement. But regarding the provisions that which have mentioned, they are choosing certain application of certain provisions of the general part. This is something that is more, I have to say, engineer thinking way of dealing contract than a lawyer's way, but it's functioning somehow. Then we have the general terms, in which you have terms for all the previously mentioned types of agreements, and finally annex definitions. So everything regarding this agreement is the matter of what combination you are choosing, although some of the provisions are standard and is not part of the option. Now, okay, I'll tell a little bit more about the financial settlement PPA. In case of IFET, as I have mentioned, it is between the producer and the buyer. In practice, it can be very often between traders and producer with trader and so on. But let's stick to this one. So we need here in this the contractual price and the electricity reference price source, which is index of prices, energy exchange on some of the concrete markets, and the calculation period. There is a price differentiation which is paid by one of the other party. It is basically common contract for difference that you are all aware of. There are some interesting provisions that are provided in the IFET, is that often the deemed delivery volume, the agreed volume, will be paid and will be calculated, and not the actual one that has been delivered in the other agreement with the physical delivery. And market disruption event are such kind of event which basically leads to that it is not possible to, for this or that reason, to find the reference price on a certain delivery period, calculation period. The solution in this it can be provided like a secondary solution or some other solution, or there can be an expert opinion of the parties which resolve the issue, what will be the reference price, market price. Okay, now some specific risks. It is quite complex and there are so many things related to this agreement. I have picked only two issues for this presentation. The most important is the issue of the price, because these are long-term agreements from usually in practice 8, 10, 12 years long, and predicting and agreeing of the price is very difficult for the companies, for both sides, because the market fluctuation can be not only fluctuation, but quite different prices. But the essence of this agreement is to secure certain price. That's why it is rarely that it is only this agreement concluded, but it is also followed by contracts for difference, as mentioned before, or insurance policies or bank guarantees for some of the risks. Now, by its purpose and by its nature, when the market price, we have a contractual price, which is a steady price for a certain period for many years. Then there is a market price that can go quite up. In this case, the producer has the risk because the producer is not getting the price that is on the market, but is selling the electricity at much lower price. Or if the price on the market goes below the agreed price, then this is the risk of the buyer who is buying for higher price because it was agreed some years ago. Now, the physical settlement contracts usually have fixed price for the whole period, or they have different fixed prices for different periods. I don't know, for 1 year, for a couple of years or months, there is a different price, or they are even linked to some index prices or energy exchange, which is not its initial purpose to have to secure the price between the parties. In case of market disruption, we have mentioned it can apply for financial agreements or for physical delivery agreements linked to index or market price. Only the expert, if nothing else, if there is not price, has to help here. Now, change in law is also a very important subject because on the level of the European Union, the level of member states, there are a lot of intervention in the functioning of the markets. There are a lot of new introduced taxes, changes, and we can see that the regulatory framework of the market and even of only the production of renewables is amended very often, which increases naturally the security of law, and it's not something, but it the best, the recommended practice, but we have to deal with this. This is our presence. That's why the provisions regarding the change of law are very important. And unfortunately, in practice, during the negotiations of the agreement, they are left to the lawyers to conclude at the end when everything else has been agreed. It is difficult. Yeah, you have to have at the same time, and contradictory. You have at the same time agreement. You want to have a fixed price, and you have these prices that affects the price coming from the change of law. In the provision regarding trying to secure the parties is a triggering event. Whatever has happened, the amendment of law has to happen after the signing of the agreement. And there are some qualification criteria. The change of law in law has to be of such a degree that it affects the price, the purpose of the purpose of the agreement. Whether it will be change of the scheme of a renewables scheme or state aid received by the producer that will affect of its costs for production, and such producer would not have agreed on this price if it knew, or there will be some other taxes, and the final the effect of the change in law in order to apply this provision and to discuss about the amendments of the agreement should be that the benefits are not the same of one party or even of both parties, are not the same as they thought that they would have at the beginning of the agreement. There is no clear solution for this, apart from if the parties cannot agree on the amendments to the agreement, that they can ask the expert opinion who would then propose some solution, commercial solution, that would bring the situation, their correlation on the same level as it was at the beginning, at the time they have agreed this. Now, there are a lot of discussions what should be done and whether such expert would have the binding decision, which is something parties usually would not accept, to depend their such important contract on the opinion or calculations of the external expert. And there are also discussions and different solutions in practice during the negotiation, whether in such case, if they cannot find solution, whether that could be a reason for termination of the agreement. One of the options in the effect sample that you can choose or not is that upward and downward adjustment of the electricity contract price is excluded from this. This is something that depends on the parties during the negotiation. Clearly, this is the standardization of the PPAs is something welcome by traders for sure. But it's also a question whether and to what extent it is possible. In practice, the big companies prefer, even if they start, the starting point is some kind of, some version of the effect standard agreement, PPA agreement. They negotiated the agreement. They have teams of lawyers and financial advisors, and they come to some text of the agreement that is acceptable for them. But in case of small and medium-sized enterprises, that would not be cost effective. It would be losing of time and would not have them. Now, in this direction, that there is a proposal for tailor-made PPA agreements that would be sold and match the parties at the energy exchanges. And one of these is now being introduced in Greece. By the end of the year, we will have the option that is expected to be used by small and medium-sized enterprises to participate in the PPA platform with the standard agreement, with certain procedures that will find actually the buyer and the seller, that help him to find the buyer and the seller. And that would be all. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you. I think according to the program that we do have a bit of more time. So if you wish, instead of conclusion, maybe to provide one more round of like sum up thoughts, if you feel like.
Do you have any views as to who should go first, and do you have any particular questions that you would like?
I just wanted to offer you the option if you need to just like to sum up although we will have the lesson learned section after this, but like if you wish to conclude your presentation before passing the floor to the colleague.
Yeah.
Or the Q&As from the audience, yeah.
I mean, I can always speak as long as you like, but let's give the audience a chance to see.
I'm just trying, if somebody can answer, I'm trying to imagine the letter of credit. How the letter of credit for buying electricity looks like. The letter of credit, how it looks like. Who is going to amend, change letter of credit all the time?
Who's going?
And how, I mean, standardization of the contracts obviously aim to make these contracts tradable.
Yes.
That essentially means to get back-to-back letter of credit. That's nice, but what if transaction costs are changing almost constantly?
What if the price is
What if transaction costs, for example, CBAM custom duty, is changing all the time?
Yeah.
Who is going to absorb the risk? That's not the bank.
Bank
That's
never.
yeah. That's not the seller. If there is a shortage of electricity, that is essentially buyer. And buyer, assuming use electricity for something. That something may be tradable or may not be tradable. So there are limits. How much risk you can absorb.
There is also there is also the type of agreement. What is actually the agreed quantities and how it is calculated? What is the agreed price and what is the agreed risk? It is quite clear in the agreements if you actually read the final agreement concluded between the parties. The division of risk is quite clear. It's not bank.
It's not bank, but put there the variable transaction cost, which is CBAM. CBAM is essentially variable transaction cost, which can variate, as we know, plus minus 10 times.
Yes, okay, we can maybe even, I'm not sure whether you can put it as a variable transaction costs or maybe even in the tax department. Levies and tax department, which are separate provisions of the PPAs. I have not addressed them here. I have seen, for instance, agreements that any new introduced tax will be passed to the buyer. The agreement should, if well prepared and done, clearly address the issue of the risk. Whatever changes are there must be a clear definition what types of risks, what party is. And if, for instance, new tax is introduced and there is a provision that the tax will be passed to the buyer, and if such introduced tax is really enormous, it's completely disturbing the balance of the agreement, they have to agree and to amend the agreement or ask expert for that. Depends also on the I don't know, the price, the quantity, the amounts actually to be imposed on the transaction, the costs of the transaction.
If I may add, maybe this is similar because in electricity trading, this system is well established. You have commodity clearing houses. All the time you need to provide collaterals and margins. When you trade with the futures, you need all the time. This is dynamically. This is, I believe that this PPA platform will be the same.
That's on a spot trading. That's fine.
No, they also on futures trading. If you trade in the futures, you also have this margin that is calculated dynamically, and this is the part of the cost of the transactions. I believe that every power exchange either is the part of European commodity clearing or it has its own clearing system. So this is something that all traders know that this is the cost that must be. So PPA is also a hot topic. This is something that needs to be introduced. European Union itself is also changing everything regarding this. Thanks for the nice presentation. It is all in one place for someone who wants to know about it.
Electricity traders between themselves. If you have one portfolio and another portfolio, if they are trading between themselves, that's fine. That works.
Yes.
However, what if the one side is industrial buyer? And for example, this industrial buyer is producing for example, components for Mr. Musk electric cars. And he wants the fixed price of these components.
It can be done by using some of the agreements. You have the fixed contract.
No, can, of course, but
it is very complex.
there are points where this consumer cannot consume anymore.
Of course.
it all depends on the level of difference. There is a possibility predicted by this agreement, but also in practice that the fluctuation of the market price is not effective and cannot be a legal base for amendments of the agreement.
Agreement looks nice, but financial settlement doesn't look nice.
Okay, if we don't have any particular conclusions from the panelists and any other questions from the audience. No, no, okay. Thank you. I think we could then conclude this panel and then we will, okay. Please.
To ask the question, especially regarding this international trade. And we heard that this CBAM really will affect the trading and especially the region could be put in some difficult position regarding that. But is there any thoughts of finding solution how to do this, or the result could be that the region will be concluding this own trading and stop to trade with European Union because there are a lot of difficulties regarding that, which is, I can't predict, but what is your opinion? How it could be? I'm also asking all of you who would like, maybe it could be a general question.
No, ja ću na srpskom, sad možda na srpskom malo mešam. Velika nesigurnost šta će da se desi, to je jasno iz naših izlaganja, pogotovo recimo što su države koje su naši najbliži susedi Evropske unije velike uvoznice električne energije. Hrvatska, Mađarska uvoze zajedno 14 terawatt-časova. Ovaj region je generalno izbalansiran sada, u zadnjih par godina je bilo na onom slajdu. Teško bi mogli da zatvorimo svoju energiju između nas, vrlo teško, jer obično kad imamo mi viškove, imaju ostale viškove, to je viškove, rekao sam već viškove hidroenergije i još se ulaže, tako da jako je teško šta će da se desi. Jedno je pitanje, možda to pravno smo gledali, jer uslov za izuzeće od CBAM-a je da imamo market coupling, da se povežemo sa tržištem Evropske unije i da imamo karbon sistem za naplatu takse. Sad, meni baš isto nije jasno, možda neko od drugih da kaže, možemo da se kaplujemo, bez da uvedemo sistem karbonske takse. Tu ima raznih nejasnoća, tako da mislim da su svi nesigurni šta će da se desi. I da li će ta cena da se poveća, smanji za nas, poveća za Europsku uniju, ali generalno će biti veliki problem. Mislim, za Srbiju, za Evropsku konkretno, mi smo izbalansirani, postoje godine kad imamo velike viškove, mi ćemo se nekako izbalansirati, ali mislim da je Bosna u najvećem problemu, pošto je ona izraziti izvoznik i tako. I ono da još ja ponovim, mi smo se nadali kao zemlje članice neke zajednice, za nas će biti neki povoljni sistem, zato je uvedena neki od nekih članova tamo, ali jednostavno, ne kažem, možda je greška i sa naše strane da nismo bili ali mislim da su sve zemlje usvojile put, tranzicija, dekarbonizacija, sve to jasno, ali na kraju opet ostane da nam trebaju sredstva za sve to, da su zemlje Evropske unije imale besplatne kredite, zato sve, to opet da ponavljam, to već večera više puta, ali mislim da bi bilo fair da se nađe rješenje bar za nas, jer smo mi mali deo CBAM-a na globalnom nivou, a uticaj na Evropsku uniju jako mal, bar ja tako mislim, možda nisam u pravu, a za zemlje može biti stvarno uticaj na ekonomiju, iako će za, recimo, privredu biti postepeno uvođena taksa. To je to.
Još neko da doda nešto? Da.
Dan, za Davor jedno pitanje, ako možete, ako raspolažete tim podacima, zanima me koji je odnos trenutno sada uvoza i izvoza električne energije u Srbiji i konkretno po izvorima energije, znači obnovljivi ili neobnovljivi?
Ja mislim da imate aplikaciju koju je napravio naš operator, možete vidjeti taj podatak, Energy Flow, mislim da je to bilo jako popularno pre 2 godine i dalje radi stvarno sjajna aplikacija. Znate kako ove godine ćemo biti, bilo na jednom slajdu, ćemo izbalansirani. Mi smo prvu polovinu godine imali izuzetnu hidrologiju i izvozili smo električnu energiju. Sad nam je bila suša u celom regionu, nije bilo ni vetra, nije. Tako da, kad kažete sad je trenutak bi recimo bila veća potrošnja, to neke stvari koje ne možete predvidite i to će da bude sve veći problem za balansiranje sistema sad kad imate više obnovljivih svakih dana. Tako da sad taj podatak, mi sad trenutno smo neku količinu vjerojatno uvezli danas, ali smo možda izvezli neku manju količinu. Tako da ako govorimo trenutno, mislim da sad smo neto uvoznici, ali nismo samo mi, imamo i druge koje uvoze, ne znam da imamo celu Srbiju, imamo izvoznike druge, tako da ta situacija, jedna je stvar EPS, jedna je stvar cijela Srbija. Sad smo trenutno, mislim da smo danas konkretno izbalansirani na nivou toga, ali zima je generalno period kad mi uvozimo električnu energiju, proleće, kad imamo vode, izvozimo i tako. Tako da, generalno za Srbiju mislim da smo mi na nivou godina ili bar na nivou 2 godine izbalansirani energetski. Ali to je to. A u svakom trenutku ima taj podatak. Ja ne mogu da kažem da nije tako ako pogledamo kakva je situacija sad trenutno.
Možda ću sad da postavim jedno jako teško pitanje, ali strašno me zanima da li, evo, svi znamo sa kakvim problemima se suočava. I mislim da je najgori moment ako se držimo statusa quo. Ok, znamo dolazi problem, a vreme prolazi i problem će doći i pogodit će sve nas i neće pogoditi samo naš region, pogodit će čak evo i te uvoznike električne energije od nas na neki način. Nekih problema će svakako da bude. Ne znam sad, evo, možda nije najbolji moment da pitam, ali evo, postavljam to pitanje jer mislim da mora da se postavi. Čak i ako se ništa ne desi, Evropska unija ništa ne preduzme. Kakvi su izlazi tu za nas? Da li mi imamo šanse da nešto preduzmemo? Na neki način mora se izaći iz tog potencijalnog problema. Šta bi to bilo? Da li može neka tehnologija da nam pomogne? Da li su to neka administrativna rešenja? Ili će nas samo zadesiti i mi ćemo da trpimo to sve?
Da kažem, definitivno mi mora da se prilagodimo jednostavno. Uvelo se, ne uvelo. Radi nas samih, jednostavno zbog zaštite, ako ne drugo zbog zaštite životne sredine. Moramo krenuti tim putem. Kako, kojom brzinom, jednostavno zavisi ne samo od nas, normalno i od fondova koje bi i sredstava dobili od Evropske unije, ali mislim da zajednički jednostavno u regionu treba da iznađemo neki način, ako ne samo svaka zemlja pojedinačno. Vidjeli smo šta očekuje Ukrajina. Da li će se ona vaditi na onaj član neki koji je bio da se poziva izuzeće, na primjer, da li kao što bi mi rekli u ugovorima force majeure, na primjer, pa da im se izuzme uvođenje CBAM-a za određeni period ili jednostavno da se oslobode skroz. To je druga stvar. Ali mi u regionu jednostavno spominjano je bilo od strane ministarstva da treba da formiramo nekakvu regionalnu zajednicu ili investicioni fond u kojoj bi se izdvajala sredstva, da se postepeno kreće sa izdvajanjem tog novca za investiranje u nove projekte, energetske efikasnosti, gradnje obnovljivih izvora i tako dalje. Ja znam da je, dobro, drugi je to primjer u Češkoj. Češka je krenula 2001. godine i ona je, na primjer, alocirala iz svoje same kompanije oko 30 milijardi evra do 2030. i planira do 2040. da bude karbon neutralna, a da 2035. eventualno ugasi proizvodnju iz termoelektrana. Ali oni dosta koriste ta evropska sredstva i jednostavno traže i dobijaju to. Mada i sami alociraju iz svojih sredstava. Drugčija je situacija tamo nego kod nas u EPS-u. Znamo s čime se suočavaju sve naše elektroprivrede u regionu, ERAS, EPAB, Makedonija, EPS i tako da nisu mogućnosti jednostavno da u ovom trenutku izdvajaju tolika sredstva. Ali dobro je što su počeli, krenuli su, rade vjetroparkove, rade solarne elektrane i to treba jednostavno da se nastavi tako i ja mislim, to nam je neminovno. Jer onaj sat otkucava, ja sam rekao, bolje je da nam otkucavaju da kad ćemo ući u Evropsku uniju nego da nego da nam otkucaju kad će nam uvesti kaznene mjere. Mislim, to je strašan pritisak na sve zemlje članice Evropske zajednice.
Hvala vam na ovakvim nekim razmatranjima i čisto malo moramo otvoriti se i mi međusobno da pričamo o svemu tome, možda će doći i neke nove ideje. Hvala.
Hvala panelistima i hvala na pažnji. Aha, ima još pitanje. Izvolite.
A mene zanima da li postoji uključen, izvinite, da li postoji mogućnost skladištenja energije vezano za taj uvoz i izvoz i omjer? Znači, da li se mogu skladištiti i da li postoji veće mogućnosti skladištenja?
Mislim, ne postoje naravno tolike količine energije nego da se skladište, čak i kada to je nemoguće, tako da jednostavno nemoguće u sistemu. To kad bude, mi ćemo morati imati velika skladišta zbog obnovljivih izvora, ali taj izvoz, to ne postoji tako. Takva skladišta ne postoji i nije zamišljeno tako. To kad rešimo, da ćemo i sve probleme da rešimo oko energetike, tako da to je to.
Perhaps to solve that, you need to have some lithium mining.
If that's all, I would like to conclude this panel. Many thanks primarily for panelists for lovely presentations and for the audience. I hvala. Evo koleginica Tamara Zejak za Lessons Learned kao dobar način da rezimiramo ovaj današnji panel. Hvala.
Hvala divnim panelistima na ovom vrlo interesantnim uvidima i na značajnim temama koje su ovdje otvorene pardon, i koje su na neki način lepo povezane. Imali smo prvo prikaz jednog stanja koje nam je u Evropi, kako izgleda, da tako kažem, tržište električne energije u Evropi, kako kompanije i države članice Evropske unije vide sigurnost ulaganja u energetske projekte. Zatim smo videli kako CBAM, koji je ovdje, da kažem, danas centralna tema, utiče na trgovinu električnom energijom, pre svega na međunarodnu trgovinu električnom energijom. I za kraj smo videli da jedan od načina kako smanjiti, znači, CBAM taksu, a to je zapravo zaključenje PPA ugovora, i tu smo od Mire dobili jedan vrlo lep prikaz tih ugovora. Pa ajmo da vidimo kako nam je stanje u Evropi. Po meni ne deluje baš onako optimistično, a u smislu da postoje razna i razmimoilaženja između država članica u pogledu na način kako se treba voditi ta energetska politika. Pa tu nam je gospodin Kup kao bivši General Counsel u Energy Chapter sekretarijatu zapravo objasnio, dao pregled Energy Chapter Treaty-a koji je zaključen davne 1994. godine, koji je pretrpeo do današnjih dana brojne izmene i u pogledu članstva i u pogledu određenih odredbi. Srbija Srbija, nažalost, ili možda na sreću, nikada nije postala članica tog tritija, ali je posmatrač dugo godina, kako nam je gospodin Kup to objasnio. Znači, primetan je u posljednjih godina i trend istupanja određenih članica država Evropske unije iz ovog tritija, koji zapravo na neki način pruža sigurnost ulagačima u energetske projekte koji dolaze iz drugih država članica po principu nacionalnog tretmana i tako dalje. U međuvremenu i vidimo da je i izmenjena glavna definicija iz koje je izbačeno pominjanje stabilnosti, što je vrlo jedno onako simptomatično zapažanje. Pored toga imamo i, da tako kažem, jedno osporavanje CBAM regulative pred Evropskim sudom pravde od strane Poljske, gde Poljska tvrdi da CBAM taksa zapravo je fiskalna obaveza, a nije u stvari ekološki, klimatski mehanizam, i vidjet ćemo na kraju krajeva kako će se taj spor rešiti, šta će Evropski sud presuditi i kako će kvalifikovati zapravo CBAM. Što se tiče i sad sam CBAM praktično ima i utica na trgovce električnom energijom koji izvoze električnu energiju iz Srbije u države Evropske unije, pa smo čuli šta su neki, da tako kažem, izazovi sa kojima se susreću trgovci i kakve će oni, da tako kažem, troškove morati da snose u budućnosti kada dođe do primene CBAM regulative. To su svakako i dodatne takse na izvoz električne energije, što će u zemlje članice Europske unije, što će praktično podići i cenu električne energije prema krajnjim kupcima. Mi znamo da je EPS vrlo aktivan u trgovini električnom energijom, kako na domaćoj berzi, tako i na berzama u regionu, tako da će, da kažem, EPS svakako biti pogođen ovom regulativom, a ne samo EPS, nego i ostali trgovci električnom energijom koji će se suočiti opet sa tim, da tako kažemo, taksama, koji će imati obaveze izveštavanja, a da bi sad sve to, da kažem, predupredili, oni će morati da prosto investiraju u neke čistije obnovljive izvore energije, zatim prosto i država će sama, da kažem, morati da dođe do uvođenja nekih novih tehnologija i tako dalje, prelazak na obnovljive izvore energije. Jedan od načina za smanjenje takse jeste zapravo zaključenje PPA ugovora, odnosno ugovora o otkupu električne energije direktno sa proizvođačima iz obnovljivih izvora energije, gdje će prosto moći da dođe do umanjenja takse. Što se tiče ugovora o otkupu električne energije, postoje razne vrste tih ugovora i neke modele ugovora propisao je EFET, odnosno European Federation of Energy Traders, znači Evropska federacija, Evropski savez trgovaca električnom energijom, odnosno energijom. I tu smo od Mire čuli da postoje razne vrste ovih ugovora, da je moguće zaključivanje ugovora, znači između za fizičku isporuku električne energije, zatim takozvani virtual PPAs koji se odnose na, to su zapravo finansijski ugovori, ajde da kažemo i neka vrsta hedging ugovora koji obezbeđuju finansijsku zaštitu ugovarača. Zatim imamo ugovore, mogu da se zaključuju direktno između kupca i prodavca, odnosno krajnjeg korisnika električne energije sa posredstvom ili bez posrednika. Tako da je moguće da kažem postoji veliki da kažem dijapazon ugovora koji mogu biti zaključeni. Pay as produce u smislu da se električna energija, da proizvođač prodaje električnu energiju onoliko koliko je i proizveo, da se kupac obavezuje da preuzme tu električnu energiju. Zatim sa druge strane as consumed, da se proizvođač obavezuje da proda električnu energiju onoliko koliko je kupcu potrebno. U tom smislu proizvođači iz obnovljivih izvora ne bi mogli sami da odgovore tom izazovu, nego bi morali prosto da kupuju, da kažem, dodatno se snabdevaju električnom energijom od trgovaca električnom energijom. Tako da u principu ovo ostaje kao jedna opcija. Na našem tržištu, da tako kažem, nije još uvek razvijeno tržište PPA ugovora. Očekujemo da će u narednim periodima i kod nas da zaživi, a svakako predstavlja, da kažem, osnov za umanjenje CBAM takse. Eto, to je kratko bilo kao da tako kažem lessons learned ovog panela koji je opet kažem bio veoma koristan i gdje su panelisti dali veoma onako dobar pregled stanja sa stanovišta CBAM regulative i trgovine električnom energijom međunarodno. Hvala.
Hvala, Tamara. Evo, još jedan minut. Samo da odjavim konferenciju. Hvala svima koji ste dobrodošli na našu konferenciju. Hvala našim odličnim moderatorkama, Anđelki i Milici. Hvala našim kolegama koji su napravili lessons learned, Damiru i Tamari. Hvala našim panelistima koji su i predavačima koji su učinili ovaj događaj interesantnim i dali su mu sadržaj. Hvala svima koji ste pomogli održavanje ove konferencije, a posebno vama koji ste došli da slušate i dali nam inspiraciju da to onda radimo što bolje možemo. I evo samo da vas pozovem još jednom, ja sam na početku izlaganja najavila da ćemo ove naredne godine imati regionalnu konferenciju u saradnji sa Evropskom federacijom udruženja za pravo energetike. Otvoreni smo za sve teme, za sve vaše ideje, da popričamo kako da to napravimo što bolje i reprezentativnije i da eto ovaj naš region prikažemo i kolegama iz Evropske unije šta mi znamo, umemo i razmišljamo. I još nešto da vam kažem, znači u saradnji sa Savezom energetičara u okviru njihove 35-godišnje konferencije mi ćemo dobiti pravo da napravimo jednu sesiju, tako da pozivam sve kolege da se jave, da neke napišemo lepe radove i da predstavimo i naše udruženje na jednom isto tako eminentnom skupu. Zahvaljujem vam se. Koktel je poslužen ispred ove sale, pa evo da nastavimo naš networking koji je onako bio malo duži između ove dve sesije. Veliki pozdrav!